Hi, my name is Jenni Hiles. I'm here to tell my story of basically how I became homeless and was living in my car. And the gist of this is surviving infidelity, cheating, and divorce. Before I really get into it, I just want to preface, I am a Pisces, so I'm probably going to cry.
That's okay.
I'm going to be a little bit emotional in places. Also, I've kind of lived through this story a lot, so I'm a little bit more used to it now, so hopefully I do better with that. But also I am going to mention a lot of people in my story, and those of them who deserve for me to say their names, I will give their names. There are some people that I will not use their names. And I also wanted to mention that everybody that I mentioned throughout this, I still very much so love, except for one man, which we'll get to, from my childhood. But I don't have any harsh feelings against anyone. I want them to know that I'm coming from my perspective. This is my story, my truth, and I only know my own experience. So they may see, if they end up hearing things, they may hear things and think it was totally different on their end, and it probably was, but I just wanted to preface with that. My childhood was pretty crazy. My parents met. My mom is Cuban and my dad is Mexican. And they eventually came into this country and somehow met in Texas, where I was born, in Houston, and then moved their lives up to Northwest Indiana. We moved there when I was 2. So a series of events brought someone, her name is Miss Dorothy Woods, to my mom's home, and she basically witness to my family. So she brought my grandma to church, she brought my parents to church, and we kind of grew up in this independent fundamental Baptist church, which is now, I would say, a cult. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information about the church specifically that I went to. There's a documentary about it on, I believe it's HBO Max, might be Amazon Prime.
What's it called?
It's called Let Us Pray, Prey.
Okay. I don't think that I've watched that one yet.
No, so it's kind of new. I want to say it was maybe even made during COVID or something like that. But some acquaintances of mine are on the show. It was just kind of a small produced documentary, and it dives into a lot of the IFB cults around the country. Mm-hmm. And of course, my church was one of the biggest ones. There's a lot of information on that, but you can get a little bit more of my background and how I grew up. But basically, my parents were just they also had tumultuous childhoods, both sides, divorce, everything like that. And they were trying to give me a better life, so they put me in the private school of this church. And it was very strange, kind of confusing growing up in that environment, because my parents were not very strict themselves. My dad grew up probably since he was 12, drinking and doing drugs and, the typical listening to rock music or whatever that the church says that is bad. So they put me in this environment where none of that is allowed. Everything is very looked down upon when it has to do with the world and things like that. So for me to go to a school and to a church that's you can't wear a shirt lower than 3 fingers from your collarbone. You can't show your body. Our skirts had to be down past our knees. We couldn't listen to secular music. We couldn't go to the movies. You had to be 6 inches apart from the opposite gender at all times. All through high school, there's no holding hands or kissing or anything like that. So they put me in this school that's very strict, and everything is no, no, no. And when you're in that environment, the more you're told you can't do stuff, the more you want to do it. Right. I wanted to wear pants. I wanted to listen to music. And when I'm at home, I can. But when I'm at school, I'm being preached at that it's not allowed. It was very confusing, but there was a lot of authority figures in church that we looked up to, that did counseling and stuff like that. And we became friends with a lot of the church members. So there was this family that we met at some point, or maybe they had known my parents their whole lives, I'm not sure, but we were very close to them. They babysat me and my sisters when we were really little. They were involved in everything. And jumping back to when I was a little girl, I grew up in this church. We were singing all the time, involved in me and my mom and my sister, 3-part harmony, my dad playing guitar. We were very involved in music. I was obsessed with The Little Mermaid. Disney was my biggest inspiration. I just wanted to be a Disney princess. Ever since I was a little girl, I loved singing. So I'm playing in the bathtub, pretending I'm Ariel and everything. And my mom noticed that I had this talent for singing, so she started putting me in citywide talent shows. There was a portion of my life where I did go to elementary school that was like public before going to the private school when I was in 5th grade. And when I was in the public school at a young age, I was able to enter these talent shows. So she put me in these talent shows and I won first place 3 years in a row. Like, it was like the biggest joy of my life. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it was everyone from like elementary through to high school. So if I won first place, I won first place like over all these like older kids. And it was just like, the moment I stepped up on that stage at like 6 years old, I was like, oh my God, I want to do this forever. Like, this is so fun. I felt like my mom had me all like choreographed and dressed up, and I was super, super into it. And this family that we got close to, they would come to every single one of these talent shows. My next door neighbors would come. Miss Dorothy, who brought us to church, she was like a grandma to me. She would go to them. Like, my whole family would come. It was this whole shebang. And I'm saying all of that because the son of this woman who used to babysit us, ended up molesting me when I was probably around between the ages of 7 and 9. And it's all been a blur, but that is something that it wasn't traumatizing until like later on in my life because I didn't know what was happening to me. But I think it was like my birthday party or my sister's birthday party. There was a party going on in my home. And he did it upstairs in a house full of people. And my mom, to this day, when she found out, like, just kind of like kicks herself about it because, like, how could something like that happen in her own home? And that's the thing with childhood abuse, is most of the time it happens with people that are very close to you. Very rarely is it a stranger or someone that you do not know. Like, you trust them. They're in your life. They're around you all the time. And so I kind of kept that a secret my whole life. As I got a little bit older, I kind of started realizing what had happened to me. You know, your body changes and you start like feeling things, and like it hit me and I realized like, oh crap, I think what happened that day wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. So at this point, I'm a little bit older and it's embarrassing. And I think going through that and keeping that a secret most of my life made me like lonelier in a way. I was always the funny girl in school. I was very outgoing. Even though it was a Baptist school and our skirts were below our knee and we had turtleneck sleeves on, I was still like on the cheerleading team, very outgoing. I don't think anybody would have really known that, you know, I had a rough life at home. And so this man was kind of I would say, I guess, my canon event or whatever that kind of just catapulted into me being a very emotional, very lonely child. And I did want to point out, I wrote down a note here that mentions, I heard recently on a podcast that the effects of childhood abuse and trauma is the leading public health cost in America. I think someone actually touched on that in one of your episodes too. And I'm always a big advocate when it comes to that type of thing because it's so common in so many households, and it's also so like not talked about enough. Like, people are not open with their children. I didn't really feel safe in my household, like talking to my parents about anything like that. I didn't feel comfortable going to my mom. And even when I was older, I didn't want to come out about that because I was like, what is she going to do? Like, how's she going to react? Not that she would do anything to me, but like, I just knew my mom is very similar to me. We're very dramatic and everything's a big deal. So I've talked about this before on a podcast episode of mine in the past, where I just think it's very, very important for people to be open and talk to their children about that and make sure that they are in some sort of a safe place that they can open up to someone about things like that, because like I said, it's so common for people to live with that, and it really, really, really affects like so many areas of your life if they're not. And it's really sad. But like I said, growing up in that church and the cult that I was in, I didn't feel comfortable sharing that with anyone. So jumping forward to high school, I'm kind of seen as this like rebellious girl at this point because my dad's listening to Pink Floyd at home. He's getting drunk all the time. He was addicted to cocaine at one point. My mom was they were both breadwinners, but my mom would spend her money on us. Like, we never went without. We would shop at the thrift stores for clothes. Like, we didn't have money, and she gave us everything that she could in the ways that she could, because the income from my dad was going to other things. And I felt closer to my dad in the sense that, like, he taught me how to play guitar. He showed me cool music. Like, I grew up listening to Pink Floyd and the Cranberries and AC/DC, everything from like Enya to Avril Lavigne. And I just I wanted to be like Avril Lavigne so bad in high school. Who didn't? Mm-hmm. But in our school, is like, you can't have black nail polish, you can't have colored hair, you can't wear gaudy makeup, anything like that. So there were little bits and pieces like that were coming out of me in high school. And I got in trouble for everything. Like, my teachers loved me, but they also couldn't stand me because I was just always in trouble. I was always talking. I was always just like making the class laugh and like doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing in school. So I kind of got googly eyes towards this guy. He was a senior at the time. I was a sophomore, and his name is John. I actually just recently found out a few weeks ago he just passed. I'm not sure how he passed, but it was a little bit emotional for me, because even though that was so long ago, that relationship, he played a big part in my life, and I will be grateful to him till the day I die. But I was like so in love with this guy. Like, he was this like rocker dude. Like, he was funny, and he was always getting into trouble, and I just related so much to him. And we were very close emotionally. I was very open with him about everything. And at one point, I remember we were like in the balcony of our church. We were talking about something really deep, and I ended up telling him like basically that I was molested as a child. And he was just like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, this and this happened, and it's embarrassing. I've never told anybody about it." And he was like, "No, Jenni, you need to tell your mom." And he was like, "Who is it?" He found out who it was. He like wanted to kill this man. Like, he was very, very like disgusted by this whole thing and worried that like I was keeping that in. And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's what affected me like all this time, but like I'm not gonna, now it's too late. Like, I'm in high school, I'm not gonna tell my mom." And he kept convincing me that I needed to tell her. And eventually there was like an activity. I wanted to go on this activity with my friends, but he was doing something else. So I wanted to ditch this activity to go with him. And long story short, I got caught in that night. When I came home, I ended up losing my virginity that night. I was 15, and I came home, and I didn't know. I've never had sex before. I'm like bleeding a little bit, and I come home, and my mom's just on the couch because they couldn't find me. Where was I? The bus was there to pick me up, and I was nowhere to be found. And I was like, "I started my period. I need to go to the bathroom." So I run to the bathroom, and she just like instantly knew. Like, mother's intuition. She's like me. Like, you can read somebody from a mile away. And so I was sitting down on the couch, and she was screaming at me, and she's like, "Why do you do this thing? Why are you always getting into trouble? Like, I can't control you. You're out of control, blah, blah, blah." And I really wasn't that bad of a kid. I was just like, I wanted some sort of freedom, and I felt like I had no control over anything. And I blurted out in some way or another. I was like, "Well, probably the fact that I was molested in this house as a child." Like, my mother's jaw dropped. Her face turned white. She immediately reacted the way I would have expected her to react, which I don't blame her. She's my mom. That's a really hard thing to hear. But immediately was like booking appointments at the gyno, contacting the authorities, got to find a lawyer. We're going to put this man, once she finds out who it is, like, she freaked out because we're around this family all the time. But
that's what I was going to ask. Like, at this point, was this family still a part of your lives?
Probably every now and then. Okay. Like, we were really close when I was younger, but at some point, the church that we went to, like before we went to this bigger like cult church, we would visit their church, and it like split at some point, and then we didn't really visit them anymore. It was maybe every once in a while, like family gatherings, that we would see them. But I kind of dealt with all of that stuff, and it wasn't as hard for me in high school because we weren't around them as much, but I was still like dealing with that on my own, you know. I'm sure we still had some sort of contact in the family, and she immediately started telling everyone. The news, you know, got out that such and such happened with this guy, and we wanted justice. So the rest of my high school years was going through court hearings, and I'm pretty sure I would like miss school and stuff at some point. My friends didn't really all know what I was going through. Eventually I would tell them, and they just kind of were like, oh, you know, none of them really like understood. And again, I just felt so lonely. I felt so weird. Once people started finding out, I felt like disgusting.
Did you feel like a weight lifted off your shoulders at all when you told your mom, or not really?
I almost want to say that I felt more of a weight lifted off when I told my boyfriend at the time.
Okay.
Just because it was like out there.
The first person.
But then I'm pretty sure I just was like riddled with just like stress. Like the fact that I have to like deal with this all the time and hear about it and relive it. By this point in high school, when I had told him and my mom, I had already been like processing it and like reading into it and looking into it. I got very protective of all my like little nieces and nephews. I have a sister that is 6 years younger than me and a sister that is 17 years younger than me. So I'm the oldest of 3 in a Hispanic family, already like mama bear, very protective. And I just kind of handled it in my own ways. But it was extremely stressful and uncomfortable dealing with that, especially in high school. You're going through so many changes and emotions. And then having to sit through court for years, like explaining the story, the very, very vivid, disgusting details of everything over and over. I got to tell this cop. I got to tell that cop. I got to tell this lawyer. And I kind of like shelled up at points because I like didn't want to talk about it anymore. I was just like, I was in a room like this, like, at some points I was in a room that felt like a jail cell. It was just like so sterile and so like these strange men that I don't know, like having to tell that over and over. Since I had grown up in all of those talent shows and singing, this family was always there as a support. We had photos to show the cops and everything that like, this is proof, like she's not making it up, she's not lying, like look here he is like holding her in his arms, like it's very possible that he would have molested her because he was around us all the time. When I was around 9 years old, that was the very last year that I was involved in the talent show because I was going to private school and I couldn't do these talent shows anymore. And this man and his wife were getting married and they were like, we want Jenni to sing in our wedding. And I remember being like, no, I don't want to. And I would tell my mom, like, I don't want it. She's like, what are you talking about? You're obsessed with singing. You're always singing. You're singing for the wedding. And I was just like, no, I don't want to. And it was so out of character, which is like a huge point in like picking up on if your kids are going through anything like that. Like they're not going to want to do things that they love. They're going to be very, very standoffish to things that they would normally enjoy, kind of be more shelled and stuff like that. And that was what was happening to me. I just like wanted nothing to do with singing in this wedding. And the song that I sang for my talent show when I was 9 was From This Moment by Shania Twain. And they wanted that in their wedding. And I was basically kind of forced to sing in their wedding. So at 9 years old, I am singing From This Moment as this man walks down the aisle on his wedding day with his wife in his arms or, you know, whatever, and in front of all of their family. And I just remember being like so happy to be singing and so like embarrassed because I just felt like people could see right through me almost. And that was like a huge, I don't know why, but it was like a huge moment in my life that like I've always wanted to sing and I made it my business in the future, but I had to like kind of make it past this like terribly traumatizing day that I had to sing in this man who molested me, his wedding. And so through all of these court cases that we went through, he's sitting in front of me pleading innocent. And he had already had a past of molesting his niece. So in my court case, when they were asking for my testimony, I really wanted to touch on, like, to the jury, like, he's done this before. Like, when I came out about my story, his niece that he had done it to, he did it to me first, but she was young a few years later and came out to her family about it right away. So this is already on his record. He's a registered sex offender. This is a well-known fact, and I was not allowed to say that. They could not bring up his past at all. They had to judge him as if nothing had ever happened, which I think is stupid. I don't know if the legal system is still like that. I don't think it should be. Mm-hmm. But basically, none of the jury, except for one woman, believed me. And I thought I was like kind of past this and like healed from it, but it makes me so angry because I'm 16 years old telling these details in front of like all my friends and family are there. I was dating a different guy at this time, but my ex-boyfriend who had me open up to my mom was there for me in support. My current boyfriend is there. I am like mortified, but I was so like over it that not even this, like the tearing up that I'm doing now, nothing you got from me. I was very unemotional. I like read my statement. It was a very passionate statement, but I wasn't crying enough. So no one in the jury like believed me. And I know I'm missing some of the details, but that's just how I remember it. And I'll never forget going through the hallway of the like city court or whatever and having a woman come up to us and like saying like she fought and fought, and that's why it was prolonged for so long. Like it took 4 years for this court case to be finalized, and I'm pretty sure from what I can remember, he got away with 2 years of probation. He's a registered sex offender for life. His name is Joel Valencia, and I will say his name because if people know him out there. I think that it should, I don't think that people like that should be hidden and covered up and protected. But his wife didn't believe me. She thought I was just making crap up. The grandma, like his mom, that took care of us, she knew about her granddaughter being molested by him, but they just were calling me a liar. I'm only after money and this and that. And I'm like, I'm 16. I don't even know what this has to do with money. I don't want your money or anything like that. I just like, I'm being forced to give this testimony to put a man behind bars who deserves to be behind bars. So he's free and he has a little daughter and stuff now. And it's terrifying to me because I'm pretty sure they're still like involved in church, and churches are such like petri dishes for these types of people that it terrifies me. But that just made me feel even more lonely and like misunderstood. And at this point, I am a senior in high school, or I might be out of high school, but basically I met I call him my once upon a husband, but my ex-husband, also named John, also a Pisces, all three of us. But I met him my senior year. We kind of knew each other from the church growing up. We went to the same church. Our families all knew each other and stuff. And to him in high school, I was like the dream girl. I was just like so funny and so this and so that. And he was like obsessed with me, like in love. And I thought he was cute and he was tall and hilarious. Like we were both class clowns of our class. But my previous boyfriend, John, it was a forbidden relationship for 3 years. And I just like, I couldn't do it anymore. We have this thing called the Valentine banquet in our school. We don't have prom or dances or anything like that. And we were very like covered, like head to toe, very modest. There was no music, no dancing, nothing. Like you just go to dinner and you take some pictures and then like it's done. And it's my senior year and I had never been. So my ex-husband, John, asks my, at that time, current boyfriend, like, can I take Jenni as friends to this Valentine banquet? And he was like, okay. He gave him permission to like take me. He's just like, don't be taking any pictures. Like, I don't want you guys like flirting and stuff like that. I'm like, no. Like, I thought he was cute and everything, but he's 2 years younger than me. Like, ew, my boyfriend's 2 years older. He's so much cooler. I'm in love with him at this point. So he asks me to take me as friends to this Valentine banquet, and we go. It was great. It was fun. His sister and my brother-in-law, which was a old crush of mine in junior high, ended up going with us to the banquet together. So like the four of us were hanging out. And when I got back from this Valentine banquet, my current boyfriend, John, was like, I don't believe you that you weren't doing anything. He was just like worried that we were like flirting and I don't know that like whatever. And it really was like genuinely, it was nothing to me. Like I just wanted to go to this banquet and somebody was willing to take me as friends, and I was hanging out with his sister and our friend, and it was a good time. But my boyfriend didn't believe me, so he broke it up and like we never got back together. And like that was that. So I'm like, okay, in high school, and a few months go by. Like John T is my high school, the first boyfriend. Okay. John H is the later one.
Got
I know
it.
It's very confusing.
Okay, I'm following along.
John H. and I start getting like closer as friends and hanging out, yada yada. We end up dating by like the end of my senior year. It was the day before my birthday that he asked me to be his girlfriend, and he was very into like penguins. He loved penguins, and he was just like, we were really cheesy, you know, we're in high school, and he was like, did you know that penguins like mate for life? And I was like, oh no, I didn't know that. He's like, yeah, will you be my Jenguin? And so that's kind of where my like username on everything started. The Jenguin thing, I was just like obsessed with penguins and stuff because we were each other's penguins. We're gonna be together for life or whatever. But all that to say, like, him and I also bonded very, very strongly emotionally. Like, once we actually started dating and liking each other, it was bliss. It was perfect. It was fun. It was real. It was raw. Getting close to him, he knew everything about my past. Like, I told him about all the stuff that I had been through. And more time passes. I finally graduated from high school and I move in with his family. Because all throughout my teenage years, like, another part of why my mom was like, you're just out of control. I can't control you. I would run away. Like, when I was 13, 14, 15, I would like pack my bags, get on a plane, go to California, live with my aunt for a few months. Like, I just hated being home. I could not stand being home. And I wanted to move out so badly. So once we were old enough, I moved in with his family in his house. And it was like having this whole new dynamic, a different family. Like, their parents didn't argue in front of me. He had these siblings that were like closer to my age, and friends were allowed to go to their house. So it was just like, I was like free. And I had this person who knew everything about me, every deep, dark secret, stuff that I still had never told anybody till this day. And he was just such a big support and a rock in my life that nothing could ever go wrong. This man worshipped the ground that I walked on, treated me like a queen. We grew up together. We struggled together. Eventually, we got our own apartment, and everything that we did was him and I against the world together. Like, so much fun. We ended up going through both of our parents. I'm pretty sure it was the same month, same year, both of our parents divorced. So we went through that together. And both sides, my parents and his parents, had to do with infidelity and cheating. And I will never forget like how many conversations we had that were like, why would they do that? Like, the one family is destroyed. Like, his family is like, all their kids, like, their family seemed so well put together and everything, and like, that's being destroyed. And then my family struggling, and instead of getting actual help and like counseling and therapy and stuff, they're getting help and counseling from the church. Those people are coming into our homes. And my dad would go to work, my mom would go to work, they'd make a paycheck, throw it down on a table, and someone from the church would be like, okay, we're handling all your money, all your finances. This is how much you're going to spend for groceries. This is how much you have for laundry. This is how much you can spend on going out or whatever. Like, they had complete control of everything. And I can't imagine, like, as a grown man, somebody coming in and telling you what to do with your money and your family like that. But that tore my family apart. And just looking from our perspective at our parents and how, like, disastrous everything was, we were like, never. Like, we want something different. We want something better. Like, we are literal best friends. We do everything together. And like, why would we ever destroy our families like this? And at this point, we're together like 5 years. We have our apartment. And this whole time, like, I've always kind of been active on social media and things like that. I had a YouTube channel. We started a podcast together that was supposed to be like me and him. Instagram, like, I would share everything, but like the good and the bad. Like, no relationship is perfect. I mean, mine seemed perfect in my eyes, but everybody has problems. And I wanted to seem real and raw, and I'm very open and vulnerable, and I don't want to come off as like one of those like phony, you know, oh yeah, everything's perfect kind of, like, people knew like, oh yeah, there's stuff that goes on with Jenni and John, but at the end, like, they're always together. They figure it out. Like, we were such good teammates and partners in everything that we did. There was one Thanksgiving where we were struggling so bad for money, and we were on our way home, I think from like my mom's house or something, and a tire blows out. So we go out and we try to fix the tire. It doesn't work. We're like putting down the road, trying to get to the apartment. We're close. The other tire goes out. So we're pushing our car like down the road to get home. Like, we were like eating ramen for weeks at one time because we're like, money comes and goes. Like we've got this as long as we've got each other. You know, we wanted to make something for ourselves, and we didn't want help from other people. And when you're struggling too, like it can be kind of embarrassing. And so we had this kind of relationship that to this day is so embarrassing. So many people like looked up to us. We were the party throwers. There was Halloween and New Year's always at our house. We were, like I said, like the fun couple that would go out and just make everybody laugh, bring people together. Like we wanted to have this sense of like home and community because like our families were so like torn apart that like we made a family with our friends, and all of our friends like were just like, oh my gosh, we want what you and John have. Like, you guys are so cute together. You guys are so funny. You guys are so strong. And like my little sisters, I had like little cousins that would just like googly eye, like staring at us because he was so, so good to me. We were just, I guess, what people would call like the it couple. And it's so embarrassing like how things turned out at the end, because if I could go back in time and like not be that couple, I would like give anything for that.
Well, no, because, you know,
and I know a lot of people like say these things too.
I'm trying to think of where I want to begin. And you haven't even like gotten to the part that's going to make me want to.
You're going to be, you know, I'll be heated.
But no, first off, I'll reply to what you just said of like, you wish you could go back and not be the it couple. I disagree with you, because there are so many people that are in such healthy and good relationships. There are so many movies and books, and there's so many things in life that show these per se perfect things. And like you said, yeah, like you knew that you guys had your ups and downs, but for the most part, you knew you had it good.
Yeah.
You know? And I think a lot of people feel that way. But the reason I said, like, no, you shouldn't look back and be like, oh, I wish I could go back and not be like, or have people look at me like that.
Yeah.
I disagree with that, because that's very real. Like, and just because you had that doesn't mean, obviously, that it can't turn out for the worse. Yeah. And I think that, and this is not to be negative, because do I think there are loyal people out there? Yes. Do I think the percentage is...
You hesitated.
Do I think the percentage is like 0.5 to 1%? Yes. I do think it's out there. I think it's very rare. And I don't think that it really comes down to, like... I'm trying to make this make sense, and this might not be the right way to word it. But it's not so much that it comes down to loyalty. I think it comes down to, like you said, every relationship is going to have ups and downs. But you have to be you have to be willing to go into something knowing that, okay, when I hit this down part within myself, with this person, like I have to be willing to fight with this person to get through that.
Yeah. And that's how it was.
And like, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's so many different obstacles and so many different layers and levels of obstacles that you go through in a relationship. And both people have to fully be in it and fully be willing to stay loyal and faithful and have that commitment and work through it in order for there not to be, you know, all these other things. Because, like, yeah, no shit, you're with somebody for 20 years, it's pretty normal to get bored. We're human. It's human nature to think, oh, this person's attractive or that but it's like, in my opinion, if you really fucking love somebody, you're not going to stick your dick in somebody else, and vice versa. Women are just as bad. You're not going to ride a dick either. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not targeting just men.
We'll get to that.
Yes, but, you know, I don't know. Like, I guess my point is with that is I think it's important that you mention how picture perfect you appeared online and just in general to your friends and family
even to
and
myself.
Whatever. Right. Like, and that's what I'm saying, to yourself too. Right. And because I think that it goes to show how in reality, I mean, think about it. I feel like for the most part, relationships start off amazing. Like whether it's just the honeymoon phase or whether it is for a solid 10 years and people are like great together and everything's fine, and then things start falling apart. We don't have a prediction of if something's gonna, you know, last for 20 years or for 2 days or what, or anything in between. You know, we don't know. But the point is I think that it's important for people to know that just because something's perfect now doesn't always mean, and I don't, so once again, I'm not saying this to be negative, but like, okay. I think it's why it's important for people not to like idolize and look up to people in relationships, and because you really don't ever know what's happening behind closed doors. And shit, nothing could be happening behind closed doors right now, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to go bad down the road. You just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do think a lot of people are cheaters. I think a lot of people are not loyal or faithful. Like I said, I do think there are some good ones out there. I think it's gotten worse for so many different reasons. And maybe it hasn't gotten worse. Maybe just because social media is bigger now, we hear more about it. I'm not really sure.
Well, I think everybody's perspective, too, is like once you're in that position, it's like you buy a green car, you start seeing green cars everywhere. You get cheated on. Everybody's getting cheated on. True. Whereas like back in the day, like I was saying, we were so looked up to by so many people, but I was never like, oh, thank you. Like, oh, I know. No, I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, I'm glad you guys see us like that. But like our relationship is real. Like they knew our issues, and there was stuff that had happened in our past that like would have caused stress in a certain relationship, but we always worked through it. And like I said, I was always very open and very vulnerable about things. So that people did know that, like, I know you, like, look up to us, but, like, keep in mind, we're not perfect. Like, I always shared stuff like that. And going through what I'm about to get to, what I went through, has significantly changed my outlook on couples and relationship and love. Like, I will never look at it the same, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear what your mindset is. Because, and it's sad. It's really sad. And I think, too, you know, I am such a hopeless romantic.
I am too.
I love love. I think love's amazing. Who doesn't love love? Who doesn't want to fall in love? Who doesn't want to feel the butterflies? And I have had a couple times where I've genuinely, I don't know, maybe once, maybe twice, I don't know, that I can just think of in the top of my head of like, I was in love with that person. Like I would do anything and give anything for that person. Yeah. But was I the best version of myself to that person? No. Yeah. And were they the best version of themselves to me? No. So then it kind of like gives you that dilemma of like, I think you can really, really love somebody and they could be like your soul person in a way. Mm-hmm. But humans can be evil and they have these like animalistic just, I don't know. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like, and that's not to say it's not right at all. I don't agree with it at all. But I think that you can love somebody and still hurt them. Yeah. Yeah. And it was really bad because touching on that a little bit more, you know, I mentioned I was obsessed with Disney. And it's funny because, like, I wish they made Disney movies like they did back in the day still. I mean, I know that they've changed for certain reasons, but at the same time, for me, Disney, the fairy tale and the love and the romance part of it was my escape. Like, you know how Frozen came out and it's like about the sister love. She doesn't need a man to save her, whatever. That's all great and wonderful and everything. But at the same time, the world is so disgusting and icky and can be horrible that, like, why can't I just have my fake little princess Disney movie and, like, be like, oh, love and, you know, I mean, should somebody, like, be, oh, I need a prince to save me and I need a man to be my hero? No, but at certain points in my life, I felt like that. I felt like I literally have no one to talk to. My friends don't understand me. I'm embarrassed to talk to my friends. But when you find love in that way, there's something different about that friendship. And John, my ex-husband, John, I'm no longer talking about John T. But John was that to me. He was my savior in a way, as in, like, I can be complete. Like, when I say 1,000% myself, like, he's seen the best of me and he's seen the literal worst of me. Like, there are parts of me that nobody probably will ever see of me like that again, because that's how I was with him and I was comfortable to be myself. I didn't have to hold back. You know, I would freak out at points in my life where I would have panic attacks, and, like, that is so embarrassing and so, like, vulnerable of a place to be, like, to be in a full-blown panic attack. I don't want anybody seeing me like this, but this is my person. He loves me. He's going to take care of me. He'd help me through it. He'd help me, like,
coach me to breathe and hug me when I just need a hug. And like just having that literally 0% distrust in this man. And when I say like fairy tale romance in my head, I mean like the bare minimum that people are looking for these days. I had that plus 1,000. And like, this is where I'm going to get a little bit choked up. I would wake up many, many mornings a week to breakfast in bed. He would come to work with my favorite Dunkin' because he knew like at a certain time of night, I'm getting tired and I just need coffee. The three of us, me, John, and our best friend, David. David was in my grade in high school, but him and John were very good friends. We created a band together, and you know how I am about music, and that's like the second love of my life. To make music with your person and like write vulnerable lyrics and be in a studio and like sharing your life and vulnerability in that way with someone, you know, that got out eventually to like the people that we went to school with in the college and was like, oh, they're making bad music, but like, oh, they're so cool. They're like literally Jenni and John are making music together. And we just had dreams of like performing and, you know, having concerts, and that never happened. But like we would share music on YouTube and it was just like literally just so much joy. We turned it into, like I said, the party house for everyone. Eventually, our friends started getting into relationships, and they would still be like, oh, why don't you do what John does for Jenni? Like, why can't you do, like, I would come home multiple times a week, again, to flowers on the table. And like, I used to not like flowers, but then once you get your own house, you're like, I want to take care of it. I like plants and this and that. And he would just always do something thoughtful for me. I was always doing something for him. Like it was a give and a take. It was never like he was expecting anything. I was never expecting anything of him. We just equally took care of each other. And so in 2014, at this point, we're dating for 5, maybe 5.5 years. We get engaged. I start planning this romantic Disney-inspired wedding. So I had each one of my brides represented a different one of the princesses. They carried lanterns instead of flowers, Disney music down the aisle, the whole shebang. Every table of the reception was decorated in the theme of a different movie. So, you know, like Snow White just had like all the beautiful, like it was gorgeous. And I didn't have a photo booth for the morning of our wedding. So the day of the wedding, John is building this giant backdrop made out of 2x4s and like hand painting Once Upon a Time on it, like because he knew that it was so important for me to have my stupid photo booth backdrop. And 5:00 on the dot of our wedding day, it's beautiful outside. And I'm supposed to be getting out of the van to walk down the aisle. Torrential downpouring rain. Skies are black. Cloud, like tornado sirens. People are late. The food truck is late. My dad is late because it's a horrible, horrible, horrible storm. And that storm lasted till the very end of the night when we packed up the last box into the U-Haul. Then it finally stopped. So all this money that goes into my wedding, you know, I'm drenched, like hair and makeup done for. We got married in the rain because everything was outside. I wanted this fairy tale garden, foresty wedding. And I'll never forget that night of our wedding. We didn't consummate the marriage because we were in a hot tub together, like looking at each other, just like sobbing and crying. Like at the end of the aisle, like I insisted on, or when we walked down the aisle, I insisted that I did not want to see each other the day of the wedding, so we couldn't talk, we couldn't see each other, and I was just like, I need to see John. I like, this is horrible, what is happening, and I wish I would have embraced it and just been like, we're all getting freaking wet and whatever, it's torrential downpouring rain, like just embrace it. But I was like freaking out, and we hug each other at the end of the aisle and just like sobbing, like, oh my God, I can't believe we did it. Who cares? It's done. It's over. Like, we're married. And then we're crying that night in the tub, like the hot tub, like just like going over the events, like how it happened, how perfect everything was. And then the moment that we've been waiting for was just like, in a sense, destroyed. Because it was bad. It wasn't just a little bit of rain. It was bad. People who are listening who went there know, like, oh my God, Jenni and John's wedding. But like he did like so many things, like even my proposal in 2014, he knew my love for The Little Mermaid, so we went to this guy's backyard and he asked them if we could use his pond and his little rowboat. So he carried me down to the willow tree. It was all decked out with Kiss the Girl playing and the little boat. We're like rowing, and that, like, everything was just like, oh my God, like, how does this guy know everything that I love and like gives me, like, fulfills all my dreams and more. And on top of that, after high school, our church basically raised us to be like housewives, secretaries, pastors' wives, things like that. None of our school credits were accredited. Like, you couldn't transfer to other schools and colleges. Like, it was literally like I said, if you look into that documentary, Let Us Pray, it's crazy. So everybody starts getting married really young, like out of high school, and like super, super early in college. So my friends start getting married and slowly asking me to sing in their weddings. So I play acoustic guitar and sing for ceremonies. And that has just always been the biggest joy and honor of my life. I ended up naming that business of wedding music Part of Your World Music, because it was literally my honor to be a part of your world. Like, that is some people's like most important day of their life, and to be able to sing someone down the aisle with their dream song and to change it into this romantic acoustic version, like, I am living my life. Like, we got married pretty young. I was 24 and he was 22, but like I said, we were dating for years. So when I tell people my story now, they're like, oh, well, you guys were young and dumb, like, and you rushed. I'm like, no, we didn't rush. Like, we were together for a long time and went through a lot before we decided to get married. We just happened to meet each other when we were 15 and 17 in high school. But he was extremely supportive of all of that. He would help me carry equipment to weddings, sit there and take video. He would come with me to most of them and help me set up all the equipment, take pictures with the bride and the groom afterwards, stay at the reception with me. Like, he was literally like following me around, supporting my business. And nobody was my biggest supporter but John. Like, he was there for everything. After we got married and like the few years before, like I said, people start getting married. I'm singing for my friends' weddings. Like, some of them are starting to have kids, but we were the couple that didn't have kids. And we could stay out till 2:00 in the morning and party and drink and travel. Like, we had been to Mexico, Dominican, Greece. Like, we went to Santorini and Mykonos and everything. We were literally just living our lives. We finally bought our own house. We're doing a little bit better at this point, but we were the only friends of our group that had that freedom. So then people were kind of like envious of us in that way of like, oh my gosh, I wish we had your guys' freedom to do this. Like, obviously they love their kids or whatever, but like, we were fully enjoying our lives being just us two. So we would go to our friend's house, having sleepovers, playing video games all night, taking trips to lake houses, and like just traveling and stuff all the time. So when people hear bits and pieces of my story, which I haven't gotten to the big parts, but when they hear bits and pieces of it, they're like, oh, well, you guys didn't have a chance to like explore and like live in your 20s. I'm like, no, we fully did. Like, we were young and we got married years after. We didn't rush into that. But we were taking our time, and we really, most of our relationship, we always wanted like 4 kids. We had all their names picked out, and that was always a dream of ours. But the more we were together with each other, we're like, we're enjoying this. Like, I like that we don't have to go home and have those responsibilities yet. It's going to be nice once we do get to that point. But people were just like, oh my gosh, it's so nice that you can stay out till as long as you want with no care in the world or whatever. He did little things like, I don't know if you've ever seen a guy do this, but like, you're walking down the sidewalk and they're on the outside and he's on the, like, that was always just like from the beginning, consciously he did it. And I always was like so proud of that. He took care of me. He protected me. He was a provider. He was always the one really good thing that I will always have to say about John is that he was a very, very hard worker. Like, he was going to go to work no matter what. He rarely missed a day of work because he was going to provide and take care of me. And he would go to work, and all of his coworkers would just hear about Jenni and hear about it. And he had pictures of me on his phone all the time. His camera roll on his iPhone was like full of like hundreds and hundreds. He was always taking pictures of me sleeping or with our nieces. And just like, literally, when I say worship the ground I walked on, like, he did. I felt like a queen in his world, and his coworkers wouldn't know me. So when we would eventually meet, they'd be like, oh my God, this guy fucking loves you. Like, that's what I want. I want what you guys have. This is like so sweet, so romantic, yada, yada. He would draw me baths at night. I'm obsessed with taking baths, and most of the nights throughout the week, he would make my bubble bath, set out my wine, my Netflix, or a candle and things like that. Like, literally took care of me. And our only struggle in all of our relationship, and when I say only, I mean besides like financial things and little things in a relationship that everybody has, our biggest struggle was I wanted sex more than he did. And I just always had a bigger drive than he did. And if we ever got into like big kind of tumultuous fights, it all stemmed from that. And it is kind of embarrassing to like talk about this, but it is what it is.
Not at all. Because that happens more so than you fucking think.
And it's crazy because I literally thought I was the only one.
No.
All of my friends that I talked to, they were like, oh, my husband won't keep his fucking hands off of me. And he's always this and he's always that. And I'm like, I would literally... I mean, he was very affectionate.
I think I'm a magnet for those type of men. So don't fucking feel bad.
Too.
Okay? Honestly, I think it's a good thing that, like, at least, I mean, in a way, but trust me.
Oh, it's
I've had my fair share with a couple of those types.
The worst.
It's bizarre.
And it's
sorry, but it is. I think, well, you know what? Here's what, I take it back. Sorry, men. It's not that it's, I think it's bizarre because we're used to like the idea of like men are so sexual.
Everybody says
it's like,
the opposite.
What guy doesn't want to have sex all the time? And
that's all they're thinking about. It's just sex,
right.
sex, sex.
And I think a lot of guys that I know, they've always said like, oh my God, I would love to have a girl that wants to fuck all the time. You know what I mean? And then it's like, but no, don't feel embarrassed because I swear to you, like even just a few of my like, you know, short-lived flings, it would be like, bro, is your dick broken? I just am confused.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's that. It's like they either don't want it or their dick's not getting hard. So like then I look to that gets frustrating too because then I think that could open up the door of like, is it me? Is something wrong with me? Are you not attracted to me? Like what is it that you're not? I don't get it.
Yeah.
But don't be embarrassed because if anybody understands having a higher sex drive.
It's not really embarrassing. It's just like.
It's frustrating. It's annoying. It's like, it's something that I feel like once again, it's one of those things that it's almost like it's the opposite that we hear about. Yeah. So then when it's that, you kind of like, and like you said, you had friends around you saying, oh, like my husband can't keep his hands off me. It's kind of like, it does kind of come down to like, well, I can't relate to that. Wish I could. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and it's just weird. When I say embarrassing, I just mean it in the sense of like, how does that make any sense when you're talking about how this man treated you and how much he loved you and how much he protected and cherished you, but he doesn't want to have sex with you? Like, and not that he didn't or he wouldn't all the time, but like my drive was significantly higher. Mm-hmm. And once we got married, like, you know, people are like, oh, it fizzles out, people get boring, and the girl like stops taking care of her body or whatever. I was the wife. Like, I grew up in a Cuban and Mexican household. Mm-hmm. I was cooking. I ascended the cooking. Yes, ascended the cleaning. Mm-hmm. Like, I was cooking, cleaning. Like, he'd come home and I'm in full on fucking lingerie. This is probably a big part of our story, but at one point in our lives, one of my very close friends and I, you know, girls can have like be touchy-feely and stuff. Like, I've made out with my girlfriends and stuff like that. But we were having fun one night and we came home. We had just got wined and dined by some coworkers and stuff like that. And we ended up having a threesome, like with I think we were maybe engaged or something at the time because, yeah, my hair was shaved on the side. So I want to say it was either we were engaged or right before we were engaged. Okay. But we were also always very like open when it come to that. Like, there was never, ever, ever any question of like, where are you? Like, why the fuck aren't you home? Like, I was not controlling. We were not possessive. He had that. That's why this whole story like pisses me off because people want to say these days he didn't have freedom. Like, you were with your friends all the time. Mm-hmm. You had your guy friends. I had my girlfriends. We had our couple friends that like the majority of our 13-year relationship, we had this couple friends. The four of us were inseparable. And when they wanted to go off, just the two of them, it was just me and my girlfriend. And it was never like any worry or question because like throughout the night, he'd be like, hey, babe, like still doing blah, 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 blah. Or, hey, I'll be home at this time. And he was always home at that time. And it was just like full 100,000,000,000% trust. And so when it came...
Sorry to interrupt. When you guys had the threesome, were you at that point in the relationship, were you still kind of feeling like your sex drive was higher?
I think I always have felt that way.
Okay.
So it's funny you bring that up because I actually wanted to mention this in the past. With people who have been abused or molested, it can go one of two ways. And I'm sure you've heard it before. You either don't want anything to do with sex and being touched, or hypersexual. And in my case, I was like, I'm going to control when and how my body is touched. And not only that, but it was just like it opened this realm of sexuality for me as a child that I was very curious. But I think my body is just like sensitive, and sorry, it feels freaking good. I'm not going to sleep around with and cheat and stuff like that. But like I wanted sex very often. And I think that a lot of that stemmed from being touched and not having control of any of that situation, court and all. I wanted that control. And I was very much so not that type that wanted nothing to do with sex. And so when it came to that time in our lives that we like had that threesome, it wasn't like he didn't penetrate her. Like he didn't have sex with her. He was having sex with me, and I was doing stuff with her, and he was just like involved and like kind of being like, it's funny to say respectful, but like being respectful. And that friend of mine, still best friend till this day, like I don't want to say her name just to like her for her privacy, but it was never, ever, ever after that an issue with them being around each other. I don't trust her with him. I don't trust him with her. It was never like that at all. It happened, and then we never talked about it. It was never awkward or weird in front of our friends or nothing. It was just something that we all mutually agreed on and consented on, and it was okay. And I didn't have any trust issues with him with other girls after that.
Got it.
There were other instances in our relationship where like little things like that would happen with our friends, and everything that would happen, like he knew about, I would tell him. Or like if I felt bad that I was out with my girlfriends and, you know, like we were just being like touchy-feely with, like he knew everything. There were instances where I went out with girlfriends and I would get myself in like stupid situations and I would feel guilty. I wasn't like cheating on him or anything, but I would go home and like I would confess these things. And like I don't want to go into details of that stuff because the people involved, I don't want people like talking or even knowing about that. But like he knew, like there was never like secrecy between us. So there was a point in our relationship that is probably also another catapult of like how all of this happened. But around the time of our engagement, I went out with the same friend, one of my best friends, and another few of our girlfriends, and we were celebrating my engagement, and we went to this like dance club bar kind of thing on our town square, and we were just like woo, partying, having fun, like all got in the car with this cop. Like he's like, let me take you guys like on a joyride. So like we all get in this cop car and we spin around town, and we're just like putting our hands and our arms out the windows, like we're just having a good time, and whatever, this cop's letting us do it, so you know, we're doing it. So we get out and he's like, okay, the bride's turn. And so my friends are all kind of like, go, have fun, whatever. And I'm pretty tipsy at this point, probably more than tipsy. I've blocked a lot of this out, but I get into the car with the cop and he stops like down the road and he was like, have you ever been in a cop vest or whatever? And I was like, no, whatever. I'm like kind of out of it. And he puts his vest over me, like over my arms, holding them down, pushes me into the back of his car because I thought we were getting out to, I don't even know what we were doing. We were getting out of the car. So I felt like, okay, like comfortable, I guess, with this cop. And instead of letting me get out of the car, he pushes me into the back seat and starts like, I'm wearing a skirt. He starts like lifting up my skirt, trying to like do things to me. All I remember was like kicking the door and the door hitting him and like trying to kick him off of me and being like, no. And he was like, oh, come on. And he was like, at one point, his hand was up there. Like, I don't think he like fully penetrated me like with his fingers, but he was like really, really trying, and he was very frustrated. And in that moment, not only did I regret wearing a skirt that night, I was like, why the fuck didn't I wear pants? Because like, it would have been a lot harder for him to do anything to me. And in that moment, all I remember was like, oh my God, like, where's his gun? Like that was the only thing that I can think of, because I'm pushing this cop off of me. He's getting visibly angry and frustrated and keeps mentioning like, oh, I let you and your girls have fun. Like, why won't you let me have fun or whatever? And somehow I got him off of me and I'm crying at that point. I get into the front seat And I still have this vest over me, and I'm like trying to like get myself out of it, but I was like very small at the time, and that thing's heavy. I don't know how to like open it or anything with my arms in there. So he starts speeding down the road and like reaches over and grabs my head and pushes me down and starts opening his pants. And I am literally crying and being like, stop, stop, stop. And I just remember hearing the car like revving like so loudly. Like, I don't know how fast we were going. I was literally terrified for my life. And it took everything in my body to not bite his dick off, because I literally was like, I don't know what he's going to do to me. And so he's literally holding me. He's like, oh, I gave you a favor, you and your friend's favor, like you have to pay me back. So I'm just like there, like kind of half-assed, like mouth open, like I'm not giving him a full-on blowjob, but I'm like making him feel like whatever. And I think he was frustrated because I wasn't like actually sucking him off, and pushes me off of him, pissed off, I think because he like didn't come or whatever. But like I literally, so many things in my body, I'm like looking around, like trying to see where his gun's at, like if there's something in the car that I can grab, like how do I stop the car? Do I bite his dick off? What if he literally shoots me? We're in the middle of nowhere. And we get back to this bar eventually. And all I remember was like stumbling out of the car, and he just like drives off, and my friends are looking at me and I'm sobbing, crying, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? And I just like didn't want to talk about it. And I was like embarrassed and like literally shaking. And I get into the car with my friend, and it was a different friend at the time that was hanging out with us. And I kind of told her what happened, and she was like, what? And like trying to figure out like where he was at, if we could find him, like what do we do? Do we call the cops? And I just like I was still like drunk at this point, did not know what to do. I was just screaming, take me home, take me home. And again, there's probably little bits and pieces that I'm missing, but that's the gist of what I remember. I go home, I'm terrified, mortified, disgusted, like immediately get in the shower. And I don't know how much time passed, but eventually that friend that drove me home, which I don't really talk to her this day, she sent me a message on Messenger. And this is the one situation in my life that I didn't tell John about, because I was like, I don't know how to explain this. Like literally, how the fuck do I have to explain this whole thing again to someone that somebody was forcing me into doing? Like, am I going to have to go to court? Like, how do I bring this up? I was scared that, and I don't know why I was scared, because at this point, full trust with John, like I said, but I was scared that he wasn't going to believe me. Like that I just like did something with a cop. But I'm like, but if I confess to him and if I tell him, he might believe that I'm telling the truth, because I've told him everything in the past. And why would I tell him something that I purposely did behind his back? Like if I was going out and cheating and doing something with this cop, which mind you, he was hideous, disgusting, like not attractive at all. I knew that he was married and had children, so I would literally never do something like that. And I was like, if I tell him, like he has to know like that I'm telling the truth, because why, if I was sneaking around, why would I be telling him that? Like I would probably seem disingenuous or whatever. But I hadn't told him yet. And I don't know if it was like the week after or that weekend or something, my friend who brought me home, she sent me on Facebook Messenger a link, and she was like, oh my God, Jenni. And it was his face, a mugshot. He had been accused of multiple cases of rape in the city of Crown Point. He was a Crown Point cop. His name is Nick. I'm pretty sure he's still in the academy or whatever. So if he's out there, just beware of Nick. I don't know if he was like actually sent to jail or something, but I remember something in the article, like he was tried and then got time like knocked off. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, okay, I'm not fucking going crazy. I wasn't making that up. I wasn't so drunk that like I'm losing it. Like this guy has literally been charged for this multiple times. And she was just like, oh my God, it's the guy, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. And so I was like keeping my phone on me. And there was a time that I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to like tell him. And like, I have proof to show John like that this guy like obviously did this to me. And, all this time, we don't have passwords on our phone. We're not like, our phone's locked. Like we go into each other's phones and take pictures and stuff. Like we don't snoop or anything like that. Everything's completely open. And one day she messages me again about something, and he's like, oh, Cassie's like messaging you. So he looks and he sees the message and he's like, what is this? And I was just like, my face went blank. And I was like, so there's something that I've been meaning to tell you that I need to tell you, and I don't know what to do about it, but like I want to like try and press charges and stuff like that. And he was just like, wait, what? Like he kind of like, he freaked out. He wasn't really like attacking me or being like, oh, this is your fault. He was just like, why would your friends be so stupid to put you in that position? Why would you be so dumb to put yourself in that position? And at the time I wasn't thinking like, ew, why would you say that to me? But I was like, I mean, yeah, like, I don't know why I would think to get in this car with this cop. I'm like, it's a cop. I like, they're supposed to be there to protect us, and I trust them. And he was just like, why? He was pissed off. And I think to this day, like, he like literally cannot stand my best friend, because why did she let me get in that car with that cop? Like, that all could have been avoided if I wouldn't have gone. But I don't blame her, and I don't blame myself. Like, I know that
I probably would have gotten in and said, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we were literally, and like, it was harmless fun, and we were all there together, and I was like, oh, okay, like, he's fine. He was having fun with us. Like, how the hell was I supposed to know? So he kind of freaked out about it, and that caused a lot of tension, because he was like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, well, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. Like, he reacted pretty defensively and kind of bad about it, but it wasn't like horrible. And I was like, I thought you were going to act like much worse than this, and maybe not believe me or whatever because of the situation. I'm like, we're about to get married. Like, you hear stories like this of people ruin their weddings and their engagements over cheating and stuff like that. And I was like, I didn't know how to tell you, but like, literally look at the pictures that Cassie is sending. I'm like, I'm not making it up. And then we're reading all these articles like, this guy is literally a sex offender, yada yada. And we kind of, it like fizzled out. And every once in a while when we would argue, that would kind of come up, because I know as a man that probably affected him or hurt his ego or whatever the case may be. But our arguments would always stem from not wanting to have sex with me. And it would start like that. And he would just like, not want to talk. I'm just tired. I'm stressed from work. It was always some like excuse, like I didn't sleep all night or this and that, and like tomorrow or whatever. And he would push it off and push it off. And I felt so like dumb and humiliated and embarrassed, especially if I'm like sitting in lingerie. Like, I was mortified. Yeah. And then sometimes those arguments, I'd be like, no, I'm not done talking about it. Like, can we just at least finish this conversation or come to a compromise, and you not just like let me leave me hanging? When they would escalate and he didn't want to just like talk about it, and he wanted to shut me out and shut the doors and stuff like that, it would lead into like, well, the cop thing, this and the this and that, and like, and it would just like, it slowly, progressively, there were little things that happened that just kind of started getting worse. There was a time where I felt he never put his hands on me, but I felt very uncomfortable in a situation, and I had flashbacks from my childhood. I was sitting like up against a wall, and he didn't like shove me into a wall, but my like back was already there, and he kind of put his hands like around my neck and pushed me like to get me to listen to him. And again, this is some area of my life where I'm not perfect and I regret, like, I would put my hands on him because I'm like, don't fucking touch me like that. Like, you've never put your hands on me. You're not going to start now. And it would just progress. That argument started from him not wanting to have sex with me. And I just remember my whole childhood, my mom's way of getting my dad to calm down and shut up and leave her alone would be to call the cops. And the cops were always at our house. Like, the Hammond police knew who we were because they were always there. And what now? And I remember them always asking me as a child, do you want to press charges? Do you want to file charges against your dad? And I'm like, no, like, I just, like, my mom told me to call the cops. She's screaming over there, so I call the cops. And that was just something that I was accustomed to. And I remember this night fighting with John, being like, I'm fucking calling the cops so that he'll calm down and we stop yelling at each other or whatever. And they came, they like searched the house for a weapon. They found his gun like under the bed, which he only had used for like target shooting with his friends or whatever. He's like, do you feel unsafe? And this and that. And like went through this whole thing. And that situation, looking back now years later, I think that really like damaged his view of me. Like, I didn't respect him or something, and I never viewed it as that. It was just like a way of like, what? Like, I called the cops, and like it was to diffuse the situation. Like, that was like normal to me, and it had never gotten that bad in our relationship, but it got to that point that I was like, this is literally the only thing that I can think of to do. It's gonna calm him down, the cops are gonna leave, yada yada. But then they took his gun, and that was his childhood gun that like his dad had given him or whatever, so I felt bad. And then every argument would lead up to like, he would bring that, and then when you call the cops on me, blah blah blah. And so there were situations like that where progressively it would, get worse. And it would just kind of keep blowing up. So at some point around 2016, I would say, I started a job at a music school, and he started a job at Shillings in St. John. I'm just going to throw this out to people who know that company. Terrible, terrible company. Do not work for them. Do not buy from them. They are a family-owned Christian business, and they care about families and yada, yada. They absolutely do not. When he started working there, all of the kids that were working there at this point were like mid to late 20s. All of the kids that were working there were like 20, 21, 22, and he starts hanging out with them more and more, and he's hanging out with our friends less, hanging out with me less. And I didn't like how his personality was like changing and becoming, hanging around these young kids who literally just want to talk about drugs and sex and Tinder and drink. All they would do is drink. When he was at this job, he would go after work straight to the bar. I'm cooking, like, hey, when are you coming home? Oh, I'm going to be out or whatever. And he wouldn't come home because he was out hanging with these, in my mind, little kids. And like, I don't understand why you would want to like go backwards in your life when at this point you have a wife, you have a house, you have your pets, you have responsibilities, and you're just hanging out with kids who want to like be immature or whatever, when you already have that like freedom to like do whatever you want. But it was getting really bad. And at the time, during COVID, my TikTok started blowing up. So I was making money on that, doing like auctions and making music and stuff like that. And so he convinced me he's like, hey, if you want to quit your job at the music school, this was a few years later, he's like, focus on your business, focus on your weddings, focus on TikTok, yada, yada, and I'll take care of the house. But like, I was still bringing in income from social media and stuff like that. And I just remember like we were struggling, but he would always be like, we're happy, you're doing what you want, you're chasing your dreams, like you do you, and like still like would be this like old John that I knew, supportive and loving. And then every now and then, he's out with his friends all night or whatever. At one point, his niece, Delilah, she was around 2 years old. She was kind of in a sticky home life situation. It just wasn't good at the time. And we took her in and she lived with us. So I'm basically playing the role of mom at this point and taking care of his niece like she's my own daughter. And this was during COVID. We're in the house. I'm just doing my thing. He's going to work. And I just remember getting so frustrated that like your niece and me and stuff are like at home waiting for you, and you're spending all this time with your friends or whatever. And I would break down into these panic attacks because she had such a tumultuous childhood that like for me it was very stressful to like kind of untrain this toddler from like reacting badly to such normal situations. So he'd come home and I'm like on the ground crying, like don't know how to control her. Like she was very like, she would literally hit me and stuff. Like obviously like she's a toddler, she's not hurting me or whatever, but it was so stressful, like trying to live with a toddler for the first time in my life. And he would come home and he'd be like, go take a bath. I got her, take care. And I'm like, okay, this is my normal John. Like he was out with his friends, but he came home and he's taking care of us. And COVID hit right before my 29th birthday. So yeah, at this point, we're like a little bit older in our 20s, and I ended up quitting that job and focusing more on interior designs and stuff like that. And interior design, I've always done on the side, like for my friends and family, I do like their houses and stuff like that. And I would post content, and I'm doing that more now in my life. But I remember asking John to leave his job at Shillings. I did not like it. He seemed very stressed. He wanted to have sex with me even less. He was always just tired. And when I wanted to be up, like after work, he would get home so late and I wanted to talk to him. He didn't want to take the time to like talk to me and spend time with me because he's just so tired from this work that's draining him. And I'm like, well, if your job is draining you that bad, get a different job. Like it's affecting our home life. I would ask him to leave this job that he had, and he wouldn't. And then they would have holiday parties, and spouses are not allowed at holiday parties, which was very strange to me. Like I work at little small businesses and anybody can come, like you bring your friends, bring your family, whatever. And they did not allow spouses at these holiday parties. I'm like, that's weird. I don't know why. I don't like that. Sure, whatever, go to the stupid party. And this happened for maybe 3, 4, possibly even 5 years. And I freaking hated it. As it progressively got worse with his job, things in the house started falling apart. We were literally like, our pipes were bursting, our water heater blew. Like, my mom had to buy us a new water heater. Like, this guy came over to fix our pipes and it was spraying water everywhere. Friends were coming over to like squeegee feet of water from our basement into this little drain. Like, it was literally in shambles. And I remember yelling out, being like, you're not home, you won't sleep with me, this and that, and your work, and Delilah, and yada yada, and this house is in shambles. And he just screamed out, our marriage is in shambles. And I just was like, what? Like, it really doesn't have anything to do with our marriage. Like, it's just like everything else. And we're kind of like, sure, like neglecting our relationship and stuff right now, but like, I'm trying here. Like, I'm trying to talk to you about it. I don't like to leave things unfinished. So at some point I started feeling like I was being punished. Like, I was just like, he was doing things on purpose to just like neglect me and not pay attention. And we would go out with friends, and then I started getting toxic, which again, I regret doing this kind of thing, but we would go out with our friends and they would say something cute, and I'd be like, oh yeah, when John used to do that or whatever. Or like, my friends that knew that like we weren't having a good like sex life, I'd be like, I would mention things like in passing, like to kind of jab at him, and he would get so embarrassed, but I would do it on purpose because like, you're jabbing me at home and stuff like that, so I'm gonna out you. Like, it started getting very toxic, like on both ends. And my problem was, I needed to be able to talk to him about it to be done. And if I just vent, I don't need you to even respond sometimes. I just need you to listen and hear me out and feel me out. But he started getting to a point where he would scream, shut up, shut the fuck up, and calling me names. And that was like the one thing that I told him from the beginning of our relationship, and he never had done it. I was like, do not tell me to shut up, because my dad used to literally always tell me to shut up. Like, I would be on the car ride home from school or something, and it'd be like, and they'd just be like, shut the fuck up. And I was like, I hate being told to shut up. Don't do that. So he started doing that on purpose to hurt me. So I just felt like I was being punished, and then he was sleeping with me less and less. And I get it. Like, at that point, like, how are you going to want to sleep with your partner when there's so much tension? But then when we would make up, it felt so genuine. He would come to me and like deeply and sincerely apologize. He would hold me in the couch and like, I don't know why I do this. He's like, and then I don't know why I like hold back from you sexually. He's like, I like want to put it off and put it off and put it off. And then when we eventually like sleep with each other, it's like, it's amazing. We feel so connected. It obviously feels great. Like, we feel so in love and stuff again. And I just question myself, like, why don't I just do this all the time? Like, what is wrong with me? Why am I keeping this from her when it is such a good way of us connecting and stuff? And I would be like, okay, well, yeah, then like, stop holding back from me. Like, if you can bring yourself to like at least be kind and patient, or like give me a time when it is okay to do it or whatever, but keeping that from me all the time, I started feeling ugly. I started feeling like it's got to be my body. Like, COVID, I put on a little bit of weight, and like, I don't look the same as I did in high school. It's got to be the way I look. It's got to be something to do with me. And I just felt so hideous. I have this big fear I always have of just going to waste. Like, I know how much I have to offer. I know how good of a wife I am. I know how good of a friend I am. And I just feel like it's going to waste in this marriage with this husband that like seems to not want this and this side of me specifically. Like, and there's no one else out there that I can share this with. Like, this is my person. I'm literally withering away, and I feel like useless almost. Eventually, I went on a trip to Houston to visit my best friend, and he went with me on this trip to Houston to visit her one year. And when we were out there on that trip to Houston, his Snapchat like went off, and we rarely use Snapchat. And I looked at his phone because our phones were unlocked, and there was a streak with this girl named Carrie. And it was like 50 something day streak. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And he was like, oh, it's Carrie from work or whatever. And he showed me like all the other group chats with all of his other coworkers. And there were just as many streaks day in a row. Like, and he's like, oh, it's just like work stuff or whatever. And I opened it up, and it said like, cheers, babe, or something like that. And I was like, okay. And so I think I messaged her, and I was like, oh, can you stop Snapchatting my husband? That's fucking weird. And I never saw it again. And that should have been why that wasn't a red flag to me. I don't know. I'd never been through this. So I was like, okay, stop Snapchatting your girl coworkers like that. That's really fucking weird. And never thought anything of it again. So He just kept going out with the guys even more. There was more tension with us when we would go out. And one night we went out with our friends, and I will never forget this, right before I found out about everything. We're walking through the bar. We're like out dancing with our friends or whatever. It's the end of the night. We're leaving. And he's in front of me, and I'm holding his hand, walking behind him. And this girl, just like almost like out of the dark, comes up to me, and she's like, he looks really fucking boring. You need to leave him. And I was like, no, that's my man. She's like, no, he's not good for you. You deserve so much better. You need to get the fuck away from him. And I was like, who is this random stranger in a bar? Like, because when we were out, girls would come up to him and flirt with him, and he'd be like, oh, acting like he's egging him on. He's like, nah, I'm just kidding. He's like, this is my wife. She's like, this is my girl, whatever, and would show me off and like would turn people down by like showing them that like I was his wife and I was his girl and proud to be like in the establishment with me. And so when she did that, I was like, nah, that's my man. I was like, he's good to me. He's this, he's that, or whatever. And she just kept saying, no, like, you need to get away from him. And then she kept saying, like, he's just so fucking boring. And I'm like, this girl literally doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, okay, weirdo, she's drunk. So we left, and like that hit me years later. I was like, that is so weird. One day I went, like I said, my TikTok, I was doing auctions. So I like vintage and antique items. I would go live and I would take vintage things from my house or from an antique mall, and I would literally be like, this is starting at $10, and people would bid them up and buy stuff from me that I would look for. They'd be like, I'm looking for such and such thing from 1960, and I would go find it, and then I would do these auctions. So I was bringing in money, and so I was always at the antique mall, and I had quit my job, and I was doing this a lot on TikTok, and I went out and I was looking for stuff for that night's auction. I was all dressed up cute, and he loves the Bulls, so I found this old vintage like stained glass window that had like his birth year on it, and it said Chicago Bulls. And I was like, oh my God. And I kept finding all these cute like Bull memorabilia stuff, and I'm bringing it home. Literally, not even exaggerating, August 13, 2021, I am skipping into the house like, just picturing like Mort from Madagascar. So happy to bring my husband his gifts, and he is dead asleep on the bed with his phone in his chest. And I look at him, and he wakes up, and I'm like, babe. And he sees me, and he's just like, a fucking ghost walked into the room. I'm like, okay, were you dreaming? Like, I'm being all like patient with him. I'm like, it's okay, it's me. And he's just like fumbling around, and I'm like, what is wrong? And he's like, oh, just nothing. And I go up to him and I grab his phone, and he starts like fighting me for his phone. And I'm like, okay, now you're being weird. And like our phones are never locked. So I'm like, give me your fucking phone. So I start looking at it, and I'm opening Snapchat, and he is literally trying to wrestle me to get my phone out of his hand. I run and I look at, there's another fucking streak with him and Carrie. And I will never forget like how I felt that day. I was just like, okay, I've never seen him act like that. This is so strange. What the fuck is going on? So he starts making all these excuses and telling me that it's work or whatever. And there's nothing there for me to like read to see like what they're talking about. But I'm like, why is there another 50-day streak with you and Carrie? And I don't know who she is at this point. And I don't even remember most of that day. All I remember was like that moment, but the rest of it was kind of a blur. I just was like chasing him out of the house. He was trying to literally run and get away. He was driving in his car. So I got in my car and I drove like around the freaking neighborhood, and I'm chasing him. Like, mind you, looking back, I would literally do all of this so differently. I would literally not chase this man out of the house. I would probably pick up the phone, look at Snapchat, and walk straight the fuck out. But I am panicking. I'm chasing him around the neighborhood. I finally find him. I convince him to get in the car. We're driving around. He gets out of the car. He's walking, calling his friends to tell him to pick him up. We stop at a gas station at some point, and obviously we're talking about all this. And I'm like, did you have sex with her? And he just kind of like looked at me. I'm like, did you sleep with her? And he just kind of like looks at me like crying, tearing up. And he's just like, yes. And like confesses like really like weirdly and like timidly. And I was just like, there's no way. There's literally no fucking way. This is so weird. Literally what is happening right now. That is the beginning of my absolute like worst period of my life. I am a wreck. I am in disbelief. I am complete denial, but also like at the same time I'm screaming and yelling and like, what are you talking about? Like, tell me about her, where's she from, blah, blah, blah. She's work, she's this and that. I start looking up her name on Facebook and things like that. I reach out to her and again, would never do this day, start sending her like paragraphs like, I know you know that John is married. What are you doing with my husband? Like, why are you sleeping with a married man? I'm telling him the situation about how Lila is living with us or whatever. And jumping back to that, I forgot to mention that there was a point where Delilah, my niece, her parents came back to take her, like, we're moving to Wisconsin or whatever. So her being taken from our home, I saw John like emotionally like spiraling even more. Like that was literally like we felt we were losing our child. I am so open and used to like working on my mental health and like letting out my feelings, whether it's on the internet or to my partner or even just to myself journaling. I am very open. I know you have to get that out. So he was just never like that. And I'm like, you have to like deal with this and, you know, like not let this affect you like that. And so I was telling her all this situation and how she's like destroying someone's life and blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, it's just completely not like me. I don't know what I'm doing or why. And he was just there. And I'm pretty sure she said at some point, like, he's just sweet and funny and we got along really well. And he said that you guys weren't doing good. And so he's trying to leave you or whatever. And I'm like, what is this girl even saying right now? I was livid. I started messaging her mom, her dad, telling them what their little daughter was doing. Like, I was going crazy.
She was a lot younger?
I'm 29 or 30. She's 26 or 27.
Okay.
And in my mind, I'm like, you're 26. Like, I think that's the oldest she would have been at that point. I'm like, you're grown. Like, you're not a little girl. You know what you're doing. Who does this? And obviously, this whole time, anybody would say, like, you look at him. It's his fault. You blame the man. It's my husband who stepped out of line in the marriage. But I was so focused on like, this is so out of character and things have been slowly spiraling. His cousin had just taken his own life, and those auctions that I was doing, I was saving up money because I couldn't afford to go to Houston for his cousin's funeral. So I was raising money on auction to give to the family for funeral expenses and for John to go to his cousin's funeral. And I know that that was another thing, just like, I mean, like so many things like that happened in our family that I know it was like destroying him mentally. And I'm like, this is not him. Like, this is not this man. And meanwhile, mind you, during all of this, he's still bringing me flowers. He's still making me breakfast in bed. He's still making me baths. He's still taking me out on dates or whatever. Like, he's still doing all of those things. It's just a little bit less than what it used to be. My friends that are still in my life till this day, and I'll probably touch on them a little bit, they are the ones that had to remind me, the ones that saw me going through all of this shit. Jenni, you are living what all of us have lived through our teens and our 20s. Like, I've been with this man for 13 years. I've never had like a tumultuous breakup, a huge heartbreak. Like, was I heartbroken about my first boyfriend? Yeah, but I was like so young, and then like it's so quick in high school to just jump into the next relationship. And that was 3 years, and then I jumped into a 13-year long relationship. All of my 20s, my friends were envious of us because they were going through breakups. They were being cheated on. They were this, they were that. And I am stable and set with John. Like, I am so happy. I'm fulfilled. Like, I do think that our financial struggles played into a lot of the stress of like how things turned out, because I don't think people realize like how badly finances can affect a marriage. But to me, it was just like, that's just money. I'm not a materialistic person. He was always like, money comes and goes. It's okay. We'll figure it out. We're going to Greece. And I'm like, okay. So like all of the stuff with cheating and heartbreak and these feelings that you get when you find out that someone is betraying you was completely new to me. And I'm 30. Like, this is the first time I'm going through it. So explaining the things that I did and I'm going to do in this story is, again, for lack of a better word, embarrassing, because I am literally acting like a teenager, like for the first time being cheated on. But this is my person, my partner, my soulmate, my husband. And so I am constantly reaching out to this girl because they're talking or whatever. And eventually it gets to a point where like, okay, we're working on our marriage. He just like breaks down, sobbing, crying, like apologizing and things like that. And like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't feel okay. I'm not okay. Like, I need help. There's something wrong. And so I started looking for like therapy and outlets and stuff to help us. And I come across this friend of a friend. She calls herself a life coach. She's not like a therapist or like licensed in any way, but she does genuinely like help people. But I think she's more helpful for like people as individuals. Like she helped me talking about things that I didn't process as a child, and she was doing the same thing for John. But when it comes to me and her, I don't think she had any business like giving us therapy as a married man and wife going through an affair. And I think that her helping him with this childhood thing, like whether it helped him genuinely or not, he used a lot of that as an excuse as to like why he did to me what he did. After finding out about him, I am literally a shell of a person. Like this is probably the most media I've been in the last 3 years because I'm like healthily gaining weight and stuff now. But I was a little bit bigger than this during COVID, and then immediately, probably within 2 weeks, lost 30 to 40 pounds. Like I was rags. Like my boobs were literally like, it looked, I showed one of my girlfriends all on FaceTime. And I was like, look at my boobs. And I took off my shirt and showed her. And she's like, Jenni, it looks like you've been breastfeeding for 3 years. Like they were little deflated boobies. And I was like, I don't know what is wrong with me. Like cannot, like I wouldn't eat. I was sleeping all day long. I was so miserably depressed. And I think since I was a child, I've struggled with depression, but I've always dealt with that on my own. And I've always had outlets. Nature helps me and stuff like that. And this was like, nothing was helping me. Like I didn't have my person at the end of the day. And he was saying that he was working on things. And then one day I tell him, which he says that I was like toxic for doing. I was like, I need you to put your location on. Like, I need to know where you're at. Like, you're taking a while to get home from work. At this point, he's driving all the way to Illinois from Indiana to work at this second location at this company that he's working at that I told him to quit. But instead, they're moving him farther away from home. So he's getting home later at night. And I'm like, send me your location because I need to know what's going on. And I keep seeing him in this parking lot across the street of where he works, like throughout the day. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why is it showing across the street? Like maybe it's glitching or whatever. And it is such a far freaking drive. But one day I tell him to put his location on. I drove all the way to Illinois. Okay. I've never in my life been to Dave & Buster's, and I had always wanted to go to fucking Dave & Buster's. I will never set foot in a Dave & Buster's till this day because of what happened. But I would beg him. I'm like, come on, that's like something fun. Like, let's just go. Like, there's nothing to fucking do around here in Indiana. Let's just go to Dave & Buster's. Never took me. I drive all the way. He's at Dave & Buster's with his friends after work. And I pull up. I'm looking for a place to park. And I'm about to go inside when I see a car parked right in front of the front door. And I just like very strong intuition. I'm like, why is that car parked there? They're just like sitting there. They haven't left. It's been a few minutes. They're not going inside. They're not getting out. And I'm like, what is this fucking car? So I'm just like circling the parking lot. And I'm like, no, it's nothing. I'm just like waiting for him to come out of Dave & Buster's. I'm looking at the front door. And this car pulls out, goes around the building to the back of Dave & Buster's. And I'm like, oh, hell no. So I'm just like, that's got to be them. I don't know her car. It's got to be them. It's got to be them. And I sit and I park, which is funny because he has my location too. Why he didn't check it, I don't know. I park to where I can see the car behind me in the rear view. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, do I go up to the car? It's got to be them. Like, why is it parked in the back of the parking lot? He's told me at this point that he confessed to going across the street during his lunch break, getting White Claws and sitting in the parking lot of some business and then fucking her in the parking lot on his lunch break all the time at work. Like, he has told me that he's doing this.
He told you that?
He told me this when I first found out that that's what they were doing. Okay. Like, oh, we were just like...
Did you ever ask by any chance of like... So you, like, why were you interested in fucking her and not me?
I'm sure I asked that many times. And I think his reasoning was like he just felt like we were so distanced at that point, and he just like needed some sort of outlet, and he was talking to this girl and she was giving him attention.
All right. Anyway,
she's just a desperate little girl at work and was giving him the attention.
So a horrible excuse.
Exactly.
Okay. So
it always is. When is it not a horrible excuse?
I was just curious if it was anything better than that. But obviously not.
Obviously not.
So
I'm watching this car and I am so mad again to this day. I wish I would have gotten out of the freaking car. Ooh. But I sat and I watched this car as my husband is obviously fucking someone in it for who knows how many minutes.
And at this point, you didn't see who was in the car yet?
No, I hadn't seen any.
Just like had this
She has tinted windows, and it was just this white car. Still can't even remember what kind of fucking car it was till this day. And I'm watching this car, and I'm mortified to like go up to it because at this point it's raining. It's starting to rain. I'm like, great, fucking torrential pouring rain again. And then I was like, what if I go up and it's just like some other guy with his wife, or it's just like people smoking weed? I would be so embarrassed to be like, hey, who's in here? Like fucking my husband. So I did not approach this car, and I'm so mad about that to this day. But it starts driving away, and I get out of my car and I start walking like behind it because it's just going like slowly to the front of Dave & Buster's to where his car was parked, because I saw his truck parked there when I pulled up to Dave & Buster's, and I thought they were inside. So I'm pulling up, I'm like walking behind this car. I see his truck there and I see him get out of the passenger side car. I'm like, oh my God, I literally just watched the car as they were having sex in it. Like, why didn't I get out? I'm so stupid. I'm like more than an hour away from home. It's raining, and he gets out and I was like, hey, John. And he just like looks at me and just like looks away and like gets in his car. And I was like, oh, hell no. So I go up to her car, her window, and she's just like this, like I'm in her window and she's just staring straight, and she's just like with a smirk on her face. I start banging on her window, kicking her car. I'm like yelling at her, get the fuck out. Why are you being a pussy? Like, oh, you're gonna fuck my husband. You can't come out and talk to me about it. I'm screaming and yelling at her, and he is getting in his truck, turning it on. She runs over my foot in front of Dave and Buzz, ran over my foot. I'm chasing her down the thing. Like literally, I was trying to like find anything that I could stab her tire with or whatever. And then I'm like torn in between, like, do I keep chasing her or do I chase him? He's running in his car. And I'm like, I feel like in that, what is that movie? My Best Friend's Wedding. It's like, who's chasing who? Like, I'm over here like, I don't know which way to go. And he starts driving away. She runs over my foot, and I get into his truck. I'm like, she fucking ran over my foot. I didn't get into his truck. I got into the bed of his truck because he kept locking the doors. He wouldn't let me get in the fucking door. And I think my battery had died or my tire was flat. Like, it was a mess. So I'm in the bed of his truck, like banging on the little back window. The back window's like this big. And I'm like, let me in. How dare you fucking in? Like, I'm screaming and yelling, and he's just like acting like nothing. I pry open the little window and squeeze. I squeeze in the back of his truck. Like, again, who would go through all of this? Like, just drive away from this man. Like, he's literally an asshole. She's a piece of shit. Like, yeah. But I'm like, this is my husband. Like, I need to have answers. I need to know what is happening. Like, I was just losing it. So I climb into his car, and he's like, go to your car, Jenny. Like, I'll talk to you at home or whatever.
But you also were under the impression that he was like working on everything.
Yeah.
Like, you guys were in therapy.
We're like,
at this
we're
point.
Fixing our marriage. Yeah. He's still coming home to me every night. I'm still cooking him full-fledged meals. And so I get into his car, and he's trying to like take me to my car to get me out of there. I'm like, no, I can't. My battery's dead. And so we drove all the way home in the truck. I had to have a friend like take me back to my car the next day or something. But like at this point, the worst in me came out. I'm like hitting him while he's driving. I'm like grabbing his face, like yelling at him, like trying to get through to him in any way that I could. It was like a cry for attention or help or something. And I wish I wouldn't have reacted like that. But I could not get over the fact that I just stared at a car that my husband was having sex with someone in like the whole time. And I couldn't do anything about it. Like I could have gotten out and then actually seen them in the act.
Right. Like, yeah.
Would that have been worse?
They clearly didn't care because
I don't think they saw me there. Like, he was just
no, but like I don't even think that you going up and catching them in the act, I don't even think they would have cared or reacted.
I think she would have been the same.
That's what I'm saying, right? Because the fact that they saw you right after, if they would have felt guilty, like there would have still been some sort of reaction. Mm-hmm. They didn't even give you a reaction, that they just didn't care at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think I messaged her at one point. I was like, what the fuck were you... Like, he told me he was with friends, and she was like, I'm so sorry. Again, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was doing. Like, it was just supposed to be, like, us and coworkers thing. And I was like, were there other guys there, or was it just you two? And she's like, no, it was just so spur of the moment, Jenni. Like, it was supposed to be other people, but we decided just to go us two. And, like, it was a last-minute thing after work. It wasn't planned at all. And, like, it almost sounded like she was going to be like, but nothing happened. But, like, clearly something happened. Like, even if they were just at Dave & Buster's, like, playing games with each other, which I asked him later, I'm like, were you guys, like, walking around, like, holding hands? Like, what if somebody had seen you? Like, people know who you are around here. And he was like, yeah, like, we were holding hands. It was like a date kind of a thing. And I was just so mortified and disgusted. And all I could do at that time was keep reaching out to her. I'm like, okay, I know it's his fault. My husband is being literally a piece of garbage right now. But, like, as a woman, I reached out to her so many times. I said, as a woman, can you please stop? Like, give him some space. He's trying to work on himself. We're trying to work on our marriage. Please leave my husband alone. Just stop. And every single time it was, this is not like me. I've never done anything like this. I don't know what I'm doing or why. And then the next day she'd be fucking him in the car again on the lunch break. Like, I would watch him on his location. Mm-hmm. I was becoming psychotic at this point, like watching his location. And he ended up, like, turning that against me, like, oh, he was trapped in the marriage and he had no freedom because I had his location on and he couldn't do anything without me.
Maybe he shouldn't have been fucking somebody in a parking lot.
And I'm like, first of all, you have not been trapped, because I've never done this up until now. And, like, what are you talking? I'm the one trapped at home cooking for a man who's literally fucking a coworker in the car.
As I watch literally the location move.
So I am literally just seriously declining at this point. Another instance was, I don't remember where I was supposed to be or what I was doing, like a therapy session or whatever, and his location is in the parking lot of the hospital in town. It was like St. Anthony's Hospital in Crown Point. And I show up and I pull up next to them and I'm like, fuck. I park right next to her car and I open the passenger door where he's at, and he's sitting like this, like over the console, like with his phone, like looking at videos with her. And they're just like, and she's just like making some stupid little face at me. And I was like,
so at this what point, are you didn't leave him yet?
No.
Okay.
No, at this point I'm fighting for my marriage.
Okay.
And because he was so convincing, and obviously I can't really say this, like, because I'm not a medical professional. Like, I don't think he's been diagnosed or anything but he was very manipulative and he was very narcissistic in my eyes, because the amount of, like, apologies and groveling and crying he would do with me, and literally, like, I don't know what's wrong with me, like, and I'm like, yeah, this is not like you, this is not like him, and I want you, but, like, it's never going to be the same. And I don't know why I'm doing this. And it was just like, he was very convincing. And I also do think that I was just my body was in such shock that I, like, didn't even know, like, how to tell what was real and what was fake almost at that point. I just, like, all I wanted was to save my marriage and to save my husband. And to this day, a lot of people say people who leave are very strong. And I do think that that's true. And kudos to the people who find out about stuff and they can just walk out, because that does show strength. But I do think that staying and knowing the depths of illness that their partner is in and are willing to fight for that and stay true to themselves, stay true to their marriage and make it work, whether it's with kids or without kids. Like, I think there's a level of strength to that too. Mm-hmm. It took a bigger toll on me, and to some people maybe it comes off as, like, weakness, but I was, like, not swaying from, like, no, I promised you that no matter what, like, we can figure it out. Like, it's me and you through thick and thin. And right now it's really fucking bad. And I know him, that this girl that he was sleeping with, like, is not, like, I don't think she's attractive. He was like, oh, she's just, like, someone to fuck. I'm like, it's not like he was, like, in love with her. And he would literally talk shit about her to me and be like, I don't like her like that. She was just, like, there. She was a person that was there. But she was infatuated with him and, like, thought he was in love with her or whatever, because he's so cunning and so witty and charming that
I'm
I think
sure he was feeding her stuff.
He was definitely manipulating her, because, like, how do you get messages like that from someone's wife and not be able to like stop yourself. I want to feel bad for her in a sense, but I don't, because she didn't stop. She didn't care. She was very disrespectful and stuff. And to not be able to like remove yourself from a situation, like
it's a lack of self-respect as well.
Yeah. I think like she must have been thought so lowly of herself or whatever, been that desperate. I found them in the parking lot of the hotel or the hospital once, and I pull open the door and they're just kind of looking at me. He just gets out like, what now, Jenni? And I'm just like, what the fuck are you guys doing? He's like, oh, she was here to visit her friend that's having a baby. I was like, I don't give a fuck about her friend and her baby. Like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, get in the car. And he starts like getting into his car to drive away. And she said something, oh my God, I can't remember what it was that she said. But she said something like really fucking snarky. That's why I have no respect for her. She said, get your hands off my car. Get your hands off me or whatever. I ran around the other side and oh my gosh, again, so out of character for me. I reach in and I grab her by the neck and I grab her by the shoulder and I choked her. And I was like, get your hands off my fucking husband. And she just like looked at me and was just like scared. And I didn't do anything. Like I wasn't going to do anything else, but like I wanted to scare her because at this point she like didn't care to stop. So I'm like, I'm going to fucking threaten her to stop. Which I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this. So if you have to cut it.
I don't think so. I think it's hilarious. But trust me, once again, obviously it's not the right reaction, but I can guarantee it's the reaction that over 50% of women would have.
I was furious. I was fuming. But oh my God, the way that she looked at me, like she looked scared. And I was like, the audacity for you to tell me not to touch your fucking car. And I'm like, get your hands off my husband. So she said something else and she just like slowly gets out of her car or whatever. And I like push her back in. John is at this point coming to the car to pick me up. And I'm like kicking like a toddler, like trying to get out of his arms, like, let me go. And she's saying something out of the window, like trying to like pick at me. And so eventually I get out of his arms and she starts driving away. I jump onto the roof of her car. I rip off her windshield wiper. I'm banging her windshield with the wiper in the parking lot of the hospital. There's like hundreds of cars there. And I literally I have never felt like I could in that moment like feel myself as an out-of-body experience, like watching myself be on this woman's car while she's driving away and being like, what are you doing, Jenni? Like, literally, what are you doing?
Like you're losing yourself at this point.
Yes, and I was just literally going crazy. At that point, I was so humiliated about everything that was going on that like I needed space from people. Like I needed to just like be on my own. Like I didn't want to be talking to everybody and my friends and stuff about it. I like needed time by myself. Like I was literally just like in the bathtub all day or in the bed all day. And that couple friend that I mentioned earlier, that the four of us were attached at the hip, the husband called me and he was like, hey, and he was like, I just wanted to let you know that like we're here for you. We love you. I had just gotten off of this woman's car and I'm beating her windshield with her windshield wipers, like flustered, like fuming. And he had no idea. But I was like, okay, thank you. Like, I'll let you guys know if I need anything. But I was very short with him. But I had already told them, as well as everybody else in my life, like, guys, I'm not okay. Like, I know I'm the person that normally is throwing your baby showers, your bridal showers, your birthday parties, your surprises, the holidays. Like, I'm not that person right now. I cannot and will not be that person. Like, I need this time to myself. And people just like didn't take me seriously. I don't think they had ever seen me like that. So I was very short with them. But after that phone call with him, I'll call him A, I never heard from him again till this day. And his wife was my best friend. When she heard about all of this happening, she came over. They had also been married for a very long time, and they had just had their first child. She was in my bed with me, and I was kind of just like crying and telling her what happened because I let her come over, you know. And I just remember most of the conversation was like comparing like, oh, like what I would do, or like if A did that. I don't know, just like it was just like very comparing of the situation. I'm like, I didn't need advice. I didn't want to know what you would do differently in your marriage.
Like you just needed a friend.
Yeah. And you don't actually know what you would do in that situation. Like nobody knows what it's like until you're in it. She kind of turned the conversation into like stuff that was going on with their marriage and like venting to me. So then at one point I'm sitting on the bed and I'm just like literally look like death. And I'm like, oh, so I'm like supposed to console her now. And I want to as a friend, but I like literally have no energy to do that. And I just like remember like grabbing her and like holding and like consoling her. To feel like it completely switched and it was made about her was like very weird to me. And it was very hard. And now we're basically like, our friendship has been like torn apart by that. They've basically sided with him and are friends with John, and he comes into town and goes to see them. She would call me multiple times when I was going through things and tried to talk to me, but she was like yelling at me about how selfish I am and how you've just ignored everyone, and just how shitty and terrible of a person I am. And I'm sitting like sobbing, crying on the phone like, don't stop trying to enter. I'm like, I'm just not okay right now to like be dealing with all of this and be having this conversation, and me trying to like tell her like I can't emotionally take this on. She was like, and that's exactly why John did what he did to you. Now I know exactly why he couldn't stand you and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like to hear that from your best friend through all of this, I was spiraling even more. All of that like basically led into, we had to sell our house. I had to rehome my cats. We had our 2 kitties. I had them for like maybe 8 years at this point, and that was one of the most traumatizing things I'd ever been through, like having to give them away to like a shelter and losing my home and all my things. Like we had worked so hard to buy our first house and we were so proud, and I was fixing it up. It was beautiful. It was like a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, and like I was literally living the life. Like all of my dreams were coming true. So when all of this happened, like my whole life shattered. So we sold the house, and then he started saying, I think I want a divorce. I want a divorce. I want a divorce.
So it was his decision to get a divorce.
Yeah. So He kept saying he didn't know what he wanted. I don't know what I want. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what you want? Like, you don't see a future with us? He's like, I don't think so. I don't see anything. I just see like darkness and like just nothing. And he was sitting in the room one day, and he was like crying and stuff about something, and I was looking at him we were about this far apart, and I was like, he was just like being really mean, and I'm like, you look evil right now. And he just kind of made this face at me. He's like, because I am, Jenni. He's like, maybe I am evil. And I just will never forget it. He just like looked like a freaking like demon to me. Mm-hmm. And it was so scary to see him. But then this played a big part in, I'm not sure how many people have been through this, but I was already deprived like sexually from my husband, and then going through all of this, your body's just like so antsy that it almost made my sex drive like higher. And then seeing him like that, it scared the shit out of me, but it scared me even more that I was like not turned on by it, but I just like I like wanted him in that moment. Mm-hmm. And he came over and he came up to me and he just like kissed me like very sensually. And he was just like, I'm not a good guy, Jenni. And like kind of like reached down and like was like trying to touch me or something. Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I knew he wasn't going to sleep with me, but he was like taunting me. And I remember just being like, I just like wanted to sleep with my husband. Like it was the weirdest, scariest thing. And I think not only was it trauma bonding, but it was, there's a word for like being so like sexually aroused when you're in a state of like feeling threatened or scared. And I was just like so like humiliated to feel like that, because he still like wouldn't sleep with me or whatever. And then eventually he ended up sleeping with me later on down the road, and it was like very emotional. It was not like gross in any way. We were like connecting, and I was like, okay, he was still like going back and forth with, I want to fix it, I want a divorce. And he came inside me, and I was like, did you just do that? And he was like, I would have a baby with you at any moment, Jenni. And I was like, I was so confused. And I was like, oh my God, he's literally going to get me pregnant right now. What the fuck is happening? But like, it was the craziest thing. Like, you are literally going back and forth and saying that you want a divorce and that you don't want to be with me and this and that. And you don't know what you want. And now after all these years, you're trying to impregnate me and saying I would have a baby with you in an instant. Like, I want a family with you. And I was just like, somebody that close to you speaking to you in that way and doing those things to you is like, I didn't know where to be with my emotions. I was all over the place. So I started looking for pages and groups like on Facebook and online to connect with other people who had been through this. And I found a page called Wives Who Stay, like after infidelity, like wives who choose to stay with their husband and fight for the marriage and stuff like that. And a lot of it was like relatable, but also most of these women that were on there were like talking about domestic violence and how they were mistreating their kids. And it just seemed a lot more like damaging and traumatizing than what I was going through, that I was like, okay, I don't think in that situation I would stay, but also I'm not judging her. Like, I couldn't find anybody in there that was like going through what I was going through. I call our best friend David that I spoke about earlier, and I was like, John's in trouble. You've offered him a job down in South Carolina before. He needs help. And he's like, what happened? And I told him what happened, and he was like, what? There's no way. Every single person in our life that I told about me and John that he was having an affair, they were like, no, he didn't. Like, what? They thought I was like trolling them or something. And they're like, he would never. Like, John, nobody believed me. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know how to freaking go through this, like telling our moms and stuff that like we're probably getting divorced. And because nobody even believed me. They're like, you know, John would literally never do that to you. And I'm like, okay, well, he did. And I again felt like I was going crazy because nobody believed me. So David was just like, what? There's no fucking way. But I told him the situation about shillings. So he called John and he was like, hey man, you need to get out of there like right now. He's like, you need to leave that situation, and I've got a job for you here. Like, if you need it, just come down to South Carolina. John calls me right after and he's sobbing in tears. He's like, Jennifer. And I'm like, what? And he was like, thank you so much for saving me. Like, he's crying, sobbing on the phone. He's like, you literally just saved my life. I didn't know how I was ever going to fucking get out of there. And I called him. He's like, I really needed that. Like, I didn't know how to tell David, and you literally just saved my life. And he got a job down in South Carolina, went down there, where I'm packing up the house and selling, because I'm thinking like, okay, we're going to move to South Carolina, finally get out of miserable Indiana, get away from everything, start fresh. And he starts getting on dating apps and meeting girls and telling them that we've been divorced for 3 years. And I don't remember how I had access to his phone, but I was seeing messages between him and girls, and I was reaching out to them every time like, hey, this is my husband, he's married, we're supposed to be working on our marriage. And all of them were very respectful. And they were like, oh my gosh, he'll never hear from me again. One of them was Julia. One of them was Katie. To this day, like, we follow each other like on Instagram and everything, because they were like, what? Are you serious? This guy? Like, I have had such terrible, terrible luck with dating that I met John and I was like, dude, this is the one. And these girls tell me this, and they're like, he's so different. He seems so genuine and so sweet and charming. Like, I told him that I was sick and I almost didn't want to go on this date, and he showed up with tea and cough drops and flowers or whatever the case may be. Like, he was whining and dining these girls and manipulating them and lying to them, telling them that we were divorced. When I went down to visit him in South Carolina, I put myself on the dating apps just to see for myself if he really was on there, and he was. And so at one point I was like, you know what? I want to see what's so fucking fun about this. Like, what is so great about cheating and being on dating apps and whatever the case may be, which is horrible, horrible experience. I put myself on Tinder and I was like, I'm going to fucking see what it's all about. So I go on Tinder, and again, I wish I wouldn't have done this, but I met some guy and I was talking to him and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a one night stand. I'm not having sex. My husband's across the country and he's obviously still cheating on me or whatever. So I get on there and I ended up sleeping with him, and it was like a very short-lived like meetups here and there. And then I was telling this lady that was counseling us, I was like, I feel so guilty. I feel so disgusting. It didn't make me feel better. So people who are going through like cheating, who try to make up for it by like cheating back, it doesn't make it any better. You feel worse about yourself. And I was like, but I feel guilty and I want to tell John. And she's like, I think you should tell John if you want to. And so we get on a FaceTime for one of our meetings, and she was like, Jenni has something that she would like to tell you. And I was like, I don't know how to say this, but I ended up getting on a dating app and I met this guy and I ended up sleeping with him. And he was just like, what?
Good for you.
He was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, I wanted to see what was so fun about it. Like, and I feel shitty. So I don't know how you in your position could like feel good about yourself.
And continue to do it.
Yeah. And he was like, I can't fucking believe you would let someone else touch you like that. How the fuck? I can't even look at you right now. He was just like looking away from the camera, and it blew up. It escalated. And so I'm like, yeah, this is narcissism, is it not? This is manipulation. Like, how are you possibly looking at me like I'm the bad person? So that was just like, that's what tore our marriage apart. And he wanted me even less or whatever. And so I felt bad because I still did want to work on my marriage at that point. But I made a stupid decision. And you're going to turn it around on me and blame the whole thing on me now. Like, it was insanity. So I remember trying to like talk to him one time, and my friend Kay was over at the house, and she was sitting, and like he was on speaker and he was yelling at something, like whatever. We were talking and arguing, and her face was just like, Jenni, I've never heard a man talk to a woman like that. And I'm like, what? Like, she's like, I would never let a man talk to me. Like, I cannot believe how he was speaking to you. And I was like, what are you talking about? That was like nothing compared to like what I had been living through. And, you know, I would yell back at him too in arguments, and that was very tame. But for me to like hear somebody hear us so tamely, like him so tamely yelling at me over the phone, I was like, am I like being stupid right now? Like, how do I not see what like other people are seeing? So it got really bad to a point where I secluded myself more. My family still didn't understand I needed space, and I just kept losing people and losing people and losing people. I felt so freaking alone. I became suicidal, and it was a cry for help and a call for attention from John. I like threw myself in the car in the garage, closed the door, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it right here and then. And somehow he was, I think, inside or something. He came out to the garage, drags me out of the car, like carries me up the stairs. I'm like lightheaded or whatever, and we have this big full-length mirror at the top of our steps. We have a bi-level home, and I was just like like I literally did not even have the strength to stand. I was just like, why would you do this to me? Like, how can you fucking do this to us? Like, of all the people who have not made it in this life and in their marriage, this is not us. Like, I just literally could not believe what was happening. I'm about to lose my home. I don't have my pets. My friends are all out of my life. Like, I'm about to maybe get divorced, and I just like fall into his arms into this panic attack. And he says to this day, he's like, I will never unsee the vision of turning to the mirror and seeing you like that in my arms because of me. Like, so in the future, when I would try to make it work with him, he blames it on that. Like, it would have never been the same. It would have never worked because he couldn't get past his shame and guilt or whatever. But for me, I knew that like if we were to stay together after an affair and stuff like that, that it would be because I chose to, and I wouldn't want to bring up this kind of stuff and be like, yeah, well, remember when you cheated on me? Like, I'm capable of not bringing shit like that up if we're going to move on and be better. It was very, very lonely is like the only word that I can use for it. And he kept in contact with this girl, and I found out one more time, and I was like, you know what, I can't, I'm going to like meet up with her in person. So I found them one time in this parking lot, and I can see their silhouettes in his truck. They're kissing each other, and I'm just like, whatever at this point, wait for him to get out of the car. He drives away. He sees that I'm there, and I'm like, as he leaves, I go inside the bar and I follow her. I was like, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. Will you just fucking talk to me? Like, I need to know when this started. Like, I wanted to know, like, the details. Like, if there was something that he was saying that was going on that I didn't know about or whatever. And she was just, like, kept talking about how, like, she's a Pisces too, and this is so out of her character. And, like, she just thought that it was nothing between us. It was nothing anymore. And he only says good things about you, Jenni. He says nothing but good, amazing, wonderful things about you. And I was like, okay, I like did not want to hear this from this girl. And her friend was there, and her friend was really drunk, and she's like, hey, can you just like leave them alone? If he wants to be with her, he's gonna be with her. It's not her fault, and she didn't do anything wrong. If they want to be together, let her have him. And I was like, please stop fucking talking to me. Like, at that point, I should have been like, yeah, you're right, I should just let her have him. But like the fact that this like little girl that has no idea what the situation is was like, she knew what her friend was doing the whole time. And she was like, oh yeah, cool. It's okay that Carrie's just sleeping with a married guy. Like, just let it be, let it happen. And that's the kind of shit that like I wanted to touch on being here talking is I feel cheating is so normal these days. It's so common. Everybody's like, oh yeah, when I got cheated on, he cheated, I cheated, whatever. It's so normal. It's almost taboo. Like, people just like don't talk about it. And like, if you find out that a man or a woman is married and you continue involving yourself in that, I don't see anything good that comes from it. Sure, maybe people break up a marriage and then they end up marrying that person it's so common that later on down the road, they have the same issues. Like nothing good comes of it. And I don't know why it's so
common.
It's disgusting. When I sold my house, I decided, I invested some of that money. I bought a 2011 Jeep Liberty. And I was like, I'm just leaving. I can't be here. I'm so miserable. I'm so depressed being in Indiana. Everything reminds me of him. I'm buying a car and I'm leaving. My friends are all going to Colorado for a ski trip, and I'm going to pack it up with as much stuff as I can get on Amazon, and I'm leaving to Colorado. And on my journeys, like on the road, like I've met so many people that are just like, oh yeah, when my husband cheated on me, oh, but he was a piece of shit and he was an asshole and this and that. I'm like, no, but I don't, like, my husband wasn't a piece of shit like that to me. And like, I wasn't miserable in my marriage. I thought it was good. Like, how does something so good turn into something so bad? And I was just so lost. So I bought the Jeep and I traveled to Colorado. I met up with my friends there. And I just kind of started living my life. Like, I just did not want to be here so badly that I was like, I have to do anything to just get out in the world and experience things for myself. I have been told through this whole situation, you need to learn to love yourself. You need to find yourself and find out who you are. I've had love yourself tattooed on my body since 2012. Like, I've always been an advocate for mental health, self-love, self-care. And you can only love yourself so much. Like, I know my value. I know my worth. I know who I am. I know what I love to do and what I want to do and what I want for my future. I just want someone to enjoy it with. Like, I still feel like I'm going to waste. And experiencing dating apps and stuff like this through all of this experience has been so gross.
Horrible. It's horrible.
The same thing over and over. Everybody talks about cheating and divorce. It's just like so common.
But you also see how easy it is to go on there and just hook up with people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people on there do.
Yeah. And I mean, I ended up doing that one time, and I understand if that's your intention, but like, say that that's your intention on the dating app instead of messing with people who are actually looking for relationships. Because how else are you supposed to meet someone these days? Like, okay, I'm going to meet my dream man in the grocery store as I'm shopping for bananas.
At the coffee shop. Yeah.
Okay,
as you're walking outside. Right, yeah.
Yeah, so...
So are you guys divorced now?
We're officially divorced as of last year.
Okay.
So it was a lot of back and forth for 3 years. I don't know what I want. I want to be with you. I don't know what I want. And when he got down to South Carolina, after I reached out to the other girls and they backed off, he met this one other girl, Marissa, he's currently still with. And same thing, I messaged her multiple times. I messaged her parents because instead of going to divorce court, he was supposed to come from South Carolina to Indiana. We're like, this is dragged on and prolonged as long as it needs to be. He has convinced me so much that he wants a divorce. He wants a divorce. And it's been 3 years and you have not gotten the papers. You have not done the work. So I was like, fine, you want a divorce? I'll get the fucking papers. So now it's going to look like I initiated this and like I wanted it. This is nothing that I ever wanted. To be divorced at my age with no kids, I'm not proud to wear that title. And I know so many people embrace it, but so many of us out here are like, it like does not go with like who I am.
Yeah,
like
that wasn't what you wanted for yourself.
I feel so like not myself. And I did it because he just wouldn't do it. And so one day he was supposed to show up for court, and instead of court, I see pictures of them on Instagram in Italy with her family. Like, they paid for him to take a trip to Italy. I'm like, he's supposed to be at court right now. And he full well knew the date. And your daughter I know, like, this is a thing with most cheaters, I feel. He just has a way with people. Like, if you were to meet him right now, you would never know it was the person that I was talking about. Like, he's 6'5". He's very handsome. He's very charming, very witty, very funny. So after I tried to like take my own life, his mom and my mom came over to the house, and it's funny because I feel so bad, but to this day, like, they were like, you need to come stay with one of us or whatever. And I refused to go to my mom's house, and I went to his mom's house because I just felt more like if I wanted to be left alone, I would be left alone. They weren't as pushy. They weren't up on my butt like how my mom is. So I feel really bad, but like I chose to go to his family's house. And I will never forget one of the most hurtful things that like I went through too. Like, I had just tried taking my own life. I'm in the middle of selling my house or whatever, and I had just confessed to John about sleeping with this guy, and I was like laying dying on his mom's couch and they were consoling me. And at one point I had confessed that like I had slept with this guy, and I was like, and so I told John about it because I felt really guilty. I was told by this like therapist, like, you need to tell him something like earth shattering. So his world like shakes and maybe he like snaps out of it and realizes that what he did to you is hurtful. The way that you did this, you made this decision and it was hurtful to him. Like, he needs to see from your perspective, like how earth shattering this could be. And so I told his mom this, and she, which I love her and our relationship is like still good and everything to this day, but I know many people wouldn't talk to someone after hearing, she was like, it's kind of your fault then, the way he's acting. And I'm like, no, you're just defending your son right now. Like, I get it. Somebody, your daughter-in-law is like opening up to you about what your son did to her. And I know it doesn't make me any better for doing what I did, but I did it once because I was literally being tormented for months and months and months. And my earth was shattered anyways. Like, it can't possibly get any worse. Mm-hmm. But then to still be told that it was my fault, like I felt like all over again, this whole like emotions of like going through when I was younger and with the cop assaulting me and stuff like that. Like, it was my fault. Like, I put myself in this situation, but I don't remember having done anything to him as a wife to make him get to that point to want to cheat on me. Like, we had been through stuff and things like that, but I didn't think the whole like calling the cops on him and getting assaulted by a cop was like grounds for cheating on your wife and putting me through situations of my foot getting run over in a Dave & Buster's parking lot after you're fucking someone and then trying to leave me abandoned an hour from home. I just remember telling him, like, your twinkle in your eye is completely gone. And he's just like, I know. But the crazy part is, through all of this, we stayed in communications. When I packed up my Jeep and left to Colorado, I went on my first skiing trip, and that's when I began collecting tattoos. I get a different tattoo in every state that I travel to. But I kind of stayed in contact with him, and like I said, I tried reaching out to the girl that he's currently with, and was completely ignored. She never sent me one message, which is like, maybe in her position, I would do the same thing. But if I think about it, if I knew someone was missing their court dates, cheated on their wife after 13 years, destroyed an entire family, moved across the country and left their wife abandoned to where she had to live out of her car because I couldn't, with my income, there was absolutely no way I could afford a place on my own. I've never lived on my own. I've never owned, like rented an apartment or anything like that. And some money from selling our house is not enough for me to be paying $1,000+ just to live by myself. So everybody was like, you need to just get a job, you need to get an apartment or whatever. And I was literally not even capable of like waking up at a decent time during the day. I was like, I'm not going to be able to. Like, I know that I have the strength and I can, but I'm so tired of being strong from all the other stuff that I've endured in my life. Like, right now, I just like, it was like something that I've always thought was cool and fun. I see people living in their cars and like I've always wanted to do it, but I thought I would be doing it like with a partner or like because like I wanted to because of a good situation. But I was like, no, I'm just going to do that, save some money and hit the road and travel.
So is that what you're doing now?
So now, through all of that, the past 3 years, I had since met someone and we were together on and off for 3 years throughout my travels. A big, terrible part of all of that was I ended up getting pregnant by him, and that was shocking to my body. And I didn't know how I was going to like keep this baby. And I was still kind of talking to John throughout all of this and living on the road in my car. I had nothing to my name but a few clothes and a few dishes. But yeah, I had met N through all of this, and he was kind of there through like my whole divorce, and it kind of started as a friendship and stuff. But I was living from my car, and I had gone everywhere from like Colorado down to Florida.
How long did you live in your car for?
Like January 2022 until the end of last year, okay. I want to say. It's kind of hard to explain because I got the car at first and I was traveling the country, and like I went to Disney World for the first time when I was 30, and I went up to South Carolina many times trying to work on my marriage throughout the divorce, back to Indiana and to Pennsylvania. And at one point I was so enjoying the SUV life. Like I made like a pull-out table to have like a kitchen and stuff on it, like this chest I was keeping all my clothes in. Like I had the twinkle lights and everything. It was like the whole shebang, and it was fun. I was making a ton of content with the car, but it got kind of scary at night, and it was really good for me in the fact that like it forced me to have to get up out of bed in the morning because I needed to find a place to use the bathroom. I needed to find somewhere to eat. I've got to find a good place to sleep at night so I could cover my windows and be discreet and nobody would see where I was at and things like that. So it like forced me to like live basically. And then during the day, I'm like not going to be cooped up in the car. I'm going to hike and kayak and go to Disney. And so I was doing all these fun things and making fun like content and things like that. And I love, still to this day, I still tell my friends, like I kind of miss living in my Jeep. Like I miss SUV life because it's so adventurous and every day is like a completely new, different day. But I got very tired of not having like a place to feel like was home. But I still was not in a position after going through divorce to where I could afford a place of my own. So I found a little 1960 vintage camper on Facebook Marketplace for $8,000, and I scrounged up some money and went, and this place was in the middle of nowhere. I drove there and I was like, I'm just gonna go freaking see this camper, whatever. And I show up to these people's property and it's literally like there's no service, no nothing. And they're like, oh, if you want to stay and like test out the camper and sleep here tonight, like you can, or if you want. And like, it's kind of creepy. I feel like anybody else wouldn't put themselves in that position. But they were like, come in and have dinner with us or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I come in and I wasn't getting any like weird, creepy vibes or anything from them. So I go in and I have dinner and we're all just like awkwardly sitting on the couch, like as we're making this like business transaction for this camper. And they're like, we're not serial killers. We're not going to murder you. And I'm like, that's what a serial killer would say. Yeah. Okay. But I was just like, literally, I was still so freaking lost and all over the place. I was crying every night. I was calling my friends, like literally like so desperately lonely. And not because I was just like, oh, I need someone with me. I just like, I could never imagine myself in my 30s like this, like living from my car and trying to find a camper to live from and wanting to be adventurous, but not having the money to do it, and trying to like build up my business of the interior design and the wedding singing and stuff like that. So through all of this is when I got pregnant, and I approached N, who I was pregnant by, and he had been through a like kind of crazy relationship where the girl got pregnant and he wasn't sure if it was even his, but she was saying it was his, and there was cheating involved and yada yada. And he was just like, I'm like really turned off by these situations. I don't know what to do. If you want to keep it, if not, like it's up to you, but I don't want kids and I don't want a kid right now. And so I was like, oh my God, how the fuck did I end up pregnant in all of this? I thought I was infertile, 13 years of unprotected sex with my husband. Like we've never used protection. I thought I was the problem. So potentially it was probably him. And apparently I am fertile. And now I'm pregnant and homeless. Like I can't do this. So I was just like not taking care of myself. I got the camper. My mother-in-law actually went to go get it with me to South Carolina, brought it back up here to Indiana, booked a wedding. My wedding business, I sing and play acoustic guitar for ceremonies, and the camper I turned into a photo booth for receptions. Oh, nice. So they get to have like the little vintage Polaroids and like it's this whole like shebang, this whole experience for weddings, and I turned it into something really adorable. I show up there in Indiana the day before the wedding that I'm supposed to go to. I get in a wreck at the end of the street of where this woman lives and completely demolish the entire side of the camper. It is torn to shreds, shambles. Like, okay, you don't get your photo booth for your wedding. I'm sorry, but like I could still do music. It was fine. She was like a friend of mine, so she was understanding. But I wrecked the camper. So I'm like, okay, I just got this camper. This is my home. I'm pregnant. Like I literally don't know how life could get any worse. So I start fixing up the camper all summer long. I think this was the year of 2023, and trying to get it ready to go back on the road and still do weddings and stuff cross country. I ended up like I was in such bad shape and not taking care of myself. I ended up losing the baby. I lost the baby. I was alone. Like in my friends had a funeral to go to or whatever. I was in their apartment. That was probably the most physically painful experience I've ever been through, was losing a child. And like wasn't there for me for any of that. He was just kind of like frozen, like didn't know what to do, wasn't invested in any of this. John in passing saw that someone a friend of mine's brother messaged me on Facebook Messenger and was like, I heard that you're gonna have a baby or whatever, like don't doubt yourself as a mother, you're gonna be an amazing mother, this and that. And John still had access to my logins for Messenger, so that's how he found out that I was pregnant. And he called me and would leave multiple messages, just like crying and sobbing and like, I don't know what to do. Like throughout all of this was just like constantly calling me on the phone. We would talk for hours and he would cry and I would cry, and it was just like very trauma bondy the whole time. And I'm assuming that a lot of people going through divorce and cheating and stuff like that experience the whole trauma bond and stuff, but it was very new to me and I still didn't know how to handle that. And especially with having just lost a baby, like my emotions are a wreck. But I was on my way. We decided we were getting the divorce. The divorce was finalized. So I packed up the camper after finally fixing it. I got it all done. I was on a live stream about to leave Indiana to get out of that state again. And someone reported me on TikTok for like child abuse. My niece was like in the video somewhere and they reported me and got my live streams banned on TikTok. So that took away like 80% of my income. So I was like struggling again. And luckily I have this camper in my car that I don't have to pay rent or mortgage for. But I decided to head to Pennsylvania, and and I kind of like kept in touch and we're friends, and John and I like we're done, and he's got his thing going on with Marissa down there. I was struggling finding like a place to park the camper, and winter was coming and they didn't have spaces open or whatever. And he was like, just stay here. He's like, park the camper here. You have a place to stay. You're more than welcome to like use the house. His house he purchased in Pennsylvania, I turned it into an Airbnb. And I run and manage that now. And when people stay in the house, I stay in my little camper. So every once in a while when I travel and I hit the road and decide to go to a new place or visit a friend or family or whatever, I'll either take the SUV and pack it all up for like SUV type life, or I'll take the camper. But the Jeep's really bad with like gas and stuff like that. So I try not to take the camper as much. But I'm kind of like settled a little bit in Pennsylvania now, where I've got some roots and I've booked some weddings. And I'm doing a bunch of interior design, so I'm managing and co-hosting Airbnbs in that area and designing all of them. So that's fun. I feel a little bit better and more stable and set in like what I'm doing and who I am as a person. Just the trauma of everything of going through something like that was a lot to deal with at the time. And I just wanted to touch on when people go through cheating and stuff like that, I feel like they just kind of say it in passing, like, oh, I was cheated on, and it's not that big of a deal. People don't make a big deal out of it, but it could be some of the most like heartbreaking, traumatizing times of people's lives. I don't know why it's not talked about more. I hate that it's so common and so it's very strange and hard to get used to. Starting over and dating in your 30s, again with no kids. People were telling me when I went through the loss of the baby that I was better off because it would have been harder with kids, struggling and going through a divorce and cheating and stuff like that. But at the same time, like in my position, I was seeing it as I had nothing to live for. Like I felt every single day that I was dying, I was alone. I had nobody to take care of. My cats were gone. Like I had nothing getting me out of bed until I was living SUV life from my car. Trying to find food for every day. And, I just have a cooler with ice and just trying to like make sure that the ice is stocked so my food doesn't go bad. Like that kept me going. But I think that for my type of personality, had I had kids, I think I would have done better and maybe not made so many harsh decisions. I mean, who's to say how I would really have reacted in that place? But I think I was literally spiraling because I had nothing. I went to South Carolina once and I met up with John, and again, when we're going back and forth trying to work on things, he was with this girl at this time, and he was like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, I want to live this single life and like be to myself and have fun or whatever, because I never had a chance and I never got to do stuff. I'm like, yes, we did. Like we did so much with our lives. We lived our lives to the fullest, but he just wanted to experience this like singleness, but then jumps right into a serious relationship and then tells me, I'm like, what what made you stop looking at me like, oh my gosh, like Jenni, like this is my precious wife that I would never do anything to. I would never hurt her. I would never let anything happen to her. What made you freaking flip a switch? And at one point, we're staring at the sunset and the ocean together. And he was like, your body just got old to me. And I was like, oh, that's traumatizing. Thanks. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I'm just listening to him, like, and like, I feel like I'm just going numb with every little stupid thing that he would say to me like that. Like, okay, thanks for being honest, I guess, but like, you couldn't tell me that years ago, or so it was me and my body or whatever. He's like, oh, I just wanted to try something new. It was different. She was just there. It was just someone to talk to, but he never had anything to do with her after the fact. But I think he was turned off after the fact that like I reached out to her so many times and she wouldn't listen to like stop involving herself, like at least until it's, can I just finalize my divorce and then you can have him? Like, I just need to get through this without you continually showing up and like sleeping in my car, you know? And I got so fed up with it one time that I showed up at her house and I knocked, and her mom like knew who I was, like when I opened the door, and she's just like, Carrie. So I go inside the house and I had a big talk with her parents and everything there present, and she was just kind of like acting like nothing. Like, she lived at home with her parents, was spoiled, they bought her car, like mommy and daddy gave her everything. And I was like, what makes you so special to like come into a 13-year-long relationship and think that you're so much better than me to be sleeping with my husband, and like he's gonna leave me for you? Like, I and it sounds so stupid to even say, but that's literally where my freaking brain was at the time. And she was just like, I don't know, like he just like did sweet stuff for me, and he got me my drinks and stuff that I liked at work, and she was petting her dog. Her dad's sitting there, and I don't think he was well. Like, I think he was kind of sick. And I was like, I hope one day you walk down the aisle of your wedding day and your dad knows that he's walking his daughter down the aisle knowing that she destroyed another person's marriage. Like, you do not deserve to have a wedding and a marriage of your own like this, because you have no respect for marriage whatsoever. The fact that you're sitting here in front of your parents telling me that what you were doing is okay, and that you still, like, she just like didn't want to stop. She was like, I want to be with him and he says that he likes me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you are talking to me about my husband right now. And her mom and her dad were like, Carrie, what is wrong with you? Like, they were agreeing with me, and they were like, honestly, like, that's what I'm going to be thinking if she walks down the wedding on her wedding day. They're like, this is disgusting. We did not raise you like this or whatever. And she was just like shrugged her shoulders and like didn't care. And I'm like, I hope that you think of me when you walk down the aisle. I was like, you literally have no respect for marriage. You don't deserve a marriage of yourself unless you freaking open your eyes and see what you're doing and have some sort of remorse. You're like literally showing no empathy right now. You have no care in the world. And she was like, you need to have like respect for my privacy and my life. And I can't believe that my mom let you here inside the house. I was like, your mom let me in with open arms, like, so that I could come talk to you and we can like kind of get through to you to like, please just stay away from him. He's obviously lying to you and manipulating you too, or he wouldn't be talking shit about you behind your back and saying that he wants to be married and work on his marriage or whatever. Like, if he wanted to legit be with you, then okay, but like, I'm literally trying to fight here for my marriage. I told her, I was like, that's all I have to say. She's like, you have no respect for my privacy and this and that. And I was like, you're fucking my husband. Do you hear yourself? And her mom just was like over the way she was acting. She's like, this is done. She's like, she's not going to stop. We can't control her. Mm-hmm. This is just who she is. Like, and it was really embarrassing to like be in front of someone and their parents, like when they're siding with me and not their daughter. And that's where I get like messed up when it comes to, it's not just men, it's women too. Like, women cheat on their husbands just as much, but I just don't understand the not being a girl's girl type of person, and not like, the second I were to find out about someone sleeping with me and they're married, like, I don't know. I don't know why people do it.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. Hopefully it gives a little bit of perspective on how like it can destroy someone's self-esteem and self-worth and their families and their future. Like, now I just feel like I'm not completely healed by everything, but I'm getting there. And so my story is not coming from someone like others that you've had where they've lived through it, they've grown, they've they're completely better. Like, I'm not 100%, but I'm coming out of it. And I just want people out there to see the bigger picture and to have respect for people's marriages. And like, I very much so am a stickler now for like, if the person is not fully divorced, just don't. Like, some people are like, oh, well, they've been separated, or they're like going through something, they want to get divorced. Like, you do not know what is happening behind closed doors. You do not know what someone is lying to their spouse about or lying to you about. If they are not fully, completely divorced, and that person is still a part of the lives, especially if they've got kids involved, just don't.
You did incredible. And, you know, I think that the areas that you touched on, like you touched on, I feel like every stage of grief, denial, confusion, anger, frustration, like literally every emotion that you felt, I feel like you touched on, and you were, like I said, you were so honest and open about it. And I appreciate that so much. And I know, like you said, I mean, it is so common that people get cheated on. And, you know, whether someone's married or not, I'm sure so many people can relate to all of those different emotions and feelings. And, you know, a lot of people too, whether they're in a marriage or even just in a serious relationship for years, they rely on that other person for stability. And, you know, whether that's with a house or just having both incomes and being able to live on their own or with that person, you know, with the help of the person, especially too if you're in a relationship for that long and you think like, yeah, this is my future. You know, people are comfortable doing that. And then if everything falls apart, it leaves that person like, well, what do I do now? Do I go back home? Okay, if I don't have that option, where does that leave me? You know what I mean? So I feel like in so many different aspects of your story and journey, people would be able to relate to that. But it's sad.
It could be
really,
life. It's like life shattering.
Yeah. For 100%.
And even if it's the person who wants and initiates the divorce, it's still hard. It's still something traumatizing to go through, and it's giving you a new title now of divorcee.
And the thing is too, is even when you heal from it and you're through it, like you said, it does give you a completely new perspective and outlook on relationships and trust. And it's almost like not only are you starting back from the beginning, but you're almost starting even further behind, because now you have this outlook of such negativity.
Oh yeah.
And distrust.
I hate that.
And,
because like you said, like I love and I am such a hopeless romantic. Like I am a 110% effort when it comes to relationship, and I'm a long-term relationship type girl. I went through like a very, very short, brief, what people would call a hoe phase. Like my friends, like, you just gotta go out there and like sleep around and live it up or whatever. And I'm like, I put my toe in the water and it's not for me. That's not how I am. So I hate that like everything that happened is so skewed now, and I'm trying not to look at it as like depressingly as my brain thinks about it or my heart sees it. But it's also difficult, like starting kind of new and fresh and getting into dating, because I had something so freaking good. Like I was 100% invested, protected, loved, taken care of, what I thought was respected most of my relationship. I saw no red flags. Like in the beginning, really, I was so set and confident that like, how do I date and not compare people? And
not only that, but how do you find someone that might be really, really great and might not ever cheat, but not have the thoughts in the back of your mind of like, okay, well, my last relationship started this great too.
Who's to say this one isn't going to fizzle out, or even sooner, or even longer?
And it's not even to be negative. I don't think people understand that. I don't think it's about being negative, but it's more so about being realistic and almost setting up that wall for yourself so that you're not led to disappointment.
Yeah, and it's I mean, how am I not supposed to? Like I'm so jaded from everything now, and I don't want to be that way. Like I've said multiple times to my friends, like I do not want to become the bitter, angry, I hate men girl, because that is not me.
But
I've always been.
That doesn't always happen. Like I've had my fair share of just like bad relationships or just bad people, and they've all been so different. And I will be like the first to sit here and say that like I think most people cheat, but that doesn't mean like I love men. I think men are great. I think that they get a lot done. Well, not men of my generation actually, but like, you know, like
You want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think men are great for so many different reasons, and I would love to find love again. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be opposed, but I also wouldn't be shocked if it didn't work out.
Yeah,
because
and then it's sad that we have that outlook. Sad.
I am also a relationship girl. I love relationships. I love to give and have somebody. I'm like a homebody, and I love my animals. And I've gotten to a point now where I love my alone time. Mm-hmm. I just got into reading, and I love being home, and I like to work out and to just spend time with my pets. That's like my thing. But at the same time, it's the loneliness. Yeah. And there isn't anything that can replace that feeling of and I'm not even just talking about company, because the wrong company, you want them to fucking leave. It's just not worth it. But when you really, really feel that connection to somebody, and honestly, it's interesting. Not everyone that's in a relationship feels that connection either. That's not always something either. Some people settle, or some people are it works, and they're whatever the fuck, do you?
Yeah.
But that's another thing. I don't care to just be in something to be in something. I need to feel that deep connection and that spark. And
it's so rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying as well. It kind of is unfortunate too, because I've only really felt that once in my life. But even looking back, that person and I didn't treat each other the best. I mean, granted, we were so young, but I don't know. Love is a very confusing thing to me, and even to this day, it still doesn't make much sense. But like I said, would I love to share my life with someone and have it be somebody that I have a strong connection with and I'm so in love with and infatuated with? Yeah. Yes. But then I also look at things where I was talking about this recently with my friends, in multiple points I've been in many different relationships, whether they were short or longer, well, who the fuck cares? But at some point in all of those relationships, I would look at that person and think in my head, oh, this is what I've always wanted. Or even if it only lasted for a month. There were points where I had that thought, but then over time it just faded, or we stopped getting along, or I realized over time this wasn't actually what I thought it was. Or maybe I looked at them as more of a best friend and not so much of a romantic partner. I don't know, for whatever reason. But it just, I don't think I've ever found something where it's been one way in the beginning and it's stayed that way. And obviously I'm single, so obviously I haven't found it. But I don't know. And there is a part of me that wonders, do I think anything is forever? No. I mean, nothing really is forever.
Yeah.
We're not on this earth forever. We don't have our animals. We don't have our parents, our friends. Nothing is forever. So would it be nice to have that? Yes, and I do believe that you can have that, but I think it's for a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been kind of weird, getting used to, because it not only through all of that did I feel like I was grieving someone who was not dead. The grief that you go through with something like that, even with them being there right next to you or on the phone, I literally not only felt like I was dying, but I was he is no longer here. This is not the person I married. This is not my best friend. I've never lost a family member up until October 1st of this week. I just lost my first grandpa. I never lost a family member my whole life. So I've never grieved in that way, and I don't know what that feels like. And this was the first thing that I could kind of equate to that, was he is literally dead. He doesn't care about me. He's gone. He's
grieving
not
someone
here.
That's still alive.
That is
a different.
It's
something.
Torturous.
It's torture.
It's literally torture.
I was explaining that. I literally used that line a couple months ago. I was it's literally grieving a death, but the person's still alive.
They're still alive. And not only are they still alive, but he chose to do that. I'm not divorced or widowed or didn't end up homeless or whatever because it's just they died or something happened. He literally chose to do that over and over and over. And he admitted to me, it wasn't a mistake. I did it by choice. And hearing somebody say these things is very traumatizing. And then you're grieving this person that's still here. And I've envisioned having kids with this person, being old. We were literally we would see the old couple down the street walking and dancing to oh my God, it's us in the future. all of the choices that were made for me throughout those 3 years, like, felt like it was out of my control. Like, he's choosing to do this, my friend's choosing to leave, my this, that. Like, none of it felt like it was in my control, and I'm grieving all these things and all of these losses, and now what the fuck is my future? Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to not compare a man to what he was in the beginning, because that treatment that I got from John is what I think I deserve, if not more. Are there very many men out there that are going to do that? No, they can't even freaking text you back after a freaking week. Like, the little tiny bits of crumbs that they leave for us is so depressing. And knowing that he's out there giving this girl like this just princess treatment, and I'm sorry, but they don't deserve it. Like, you don't deserve to like have my husband like taking care of you and loving on you when he did what he did to me, and you were inserting yourself in someone else's marriage. Like, I think that's so fucked up that people do that, and that's just how cheaters are and how narcissists are. And like, I think most of the time you see the situation when people are involved in a relationship where there's cheating, the one that was betrayed is usually the one that's the single for long. Like, they struggle with they're not safe. They don't know how to let their guard down. They don't know how to trust again. And then the cheater is the one, oh yeah, they've got kids, they've been married, they're with this person, that person, they cheated again, because they know how to like reel people in. And there is a certain personality trait that I think that those people have got to contain to like make it that easy. I don't think it should be that easy to just like betray your person or whatever. And he's told me himself too, like, from his mouth, all I need is the fact that I'm the tallest, funniest guy in the room. Like, and these girls are so fucking desperate these days, Jenni. Like, he literally confessed to me, I'll never forget. These girls, like, I can show up and give them a Snickers bar, and it's like I bent over backwards because that's her favorite candy bar, and it's like they're so desperate for attention. You could do the littlest, most minuscule thing.
I mean, but
and
that
it's
proves
like,
that it's giving him validation, though.
It's
Like, that
giving,
it's proving that he's so low within himself that like it's entertaining him and giving him the validation that he needs by getting that attention from women.
I also think that he's probably not giving this girl that he's with the same treatment that he gave me, because he knows that he can do less, and it's so amazing
even if
to
he
her.
was, you know now that it doesn't hold value.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't. Like, it sucks, but it doesn't.
But I genuinely don't. I don't think, like, he'll still call me. He called me the other day and I didn't answer. I'm like, are you dying? And he's like, no, sorry, not yet. I just wanted to have a good cry. I hadn't something about like
His problems.
I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I wanted a good cry, but I think I'm better now. And I'm like, I'm walking into work. And he's like, I hope you have a good shift. And like, the last time he spoke to me, I mean, the girl that he's with does not know. He's on the phone with me for hours crying, and I just he talks about the past and the future that we would have been, and he's so sorry and this and that, and the things that he tells me about the girl that he's with. Should I be answering him? No, but I wasn't in a relationship, so I was entertaining it. If I'm with someone, I'm not going to be answering phone calls from my ex, but like, I was entertaining it just because I was bored or lonely or whatever. And I don't think she would be okay knowing that he's on the phone with his ex-wife saying the things that he's saying or whatever. And I just like, it blows my mind that he doesn't see like what he's doing. Like, he hasn't gotten helped. And I feel like most people like that don't or won't get help, because that is a serious mental issue. It is. And you're affecting other people's lives.
And the thing is, I think a lot of times people are going to sit in that until it bites them in the ass, and it just really, it hasn't. And unfortunately, losing you and what you guys had wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But, you know, and could I sit here and be positive and say, oh, with time, you'll find the right person. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that, because I don't fucking know.
I don't think. I hate hearing that when people are like, time heals everything.
No, I would never sit there and say that. I just think
that's the worst.
The only thing that I would say is I think that you've been through a lot, obviously, like, and a lot of different emotions, and it still is pretty fresh, you know? And I think that, like you said, you're finally finding yourself now. Like, who are you, like, on your own? Yeah. And I think that one of the most healing things that you can do right now, one of the things that's going to make you the most proud of yourself right now, is to keep working on your own personal growth. Yeah. Because the moment I think that you reach a point where you're genuinely like, Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of lonely at points, and it would be nice to have somebody, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
Like, and you get to a point where, like, you realize that if between now and the time you're off this earth, you never had a partner, you'd be all right with that.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can provide for yourself, you can take care of yourself, you can get yourself whatever you need. Like, when you reach that point, I think that it comes with a different feeling of power, and then that becomes more addicting than, like, the feeling of, like, looking for love. I mean, like,
yeah, it's just something I want.
Yeah.
That's all.
And don't worry, I get it. Like, there's been points in my life where it's like, I would literally say, all I want is love. Like, all I want is to feel love. And it's like, you're chasing it, you're looking. And then everybody says, well, it's when you're looking that you don't find it. It's like, it's always the same bullshit. I don't fucking know what's true and what's not.
Yeah.
Like, I think somebody would be lying if they said they didn't want, like, if they, like, look, I have a side of me that, like, I'm like, I don't need it, I don't want it, I'm fine. And then I have this other side of me that I have all of these desires of, like, if I did get married one day, what I would want it to look like, where I would want it to be. And it's
who
like,
wants to be alone? Nobody.
Yeah, and, like, everybody wants to have
love.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I just can't sit here and say that it's gonna happen because I don't know.
No, and I call myself a positive pessimist. Like, I try not to be negative, but I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer or anything. But, like, I'm a realist. Yeah. Like, time doesn't heal anything. It just makes it a little bit easier to bear. You just get used to it. Some people just get numb. And I wish that was my personality, to just be like happy hunky-dory and everything's fine. Like, I would have survived this much better, and maybe not tried taking my own life, and maybe had been in a better, healthy situation where I wouldn't have lost a baby and stuff. Like, I don't see it like that. And I don't know. It skews your view on a lot of things. And again, I don't want to be negative or anything, but I do think that the most important part in life, my favorite word of all, is love. Like, that is literally, at the end of the day, nobody wakes up on their deathbed one day and says, man, I wish I worked more. I should have worked longer. I wish I would have not. Like, nobody says those types of things. Like, in the end of the day, it's love, your family, yourself. Like, you wake up and in the morning after a long, like, you are the only person there for yourself after everything that you go through. I think it is very important to find yourself and be happy with what you do and with your life, for sure. I just am one of those types of people that, like, I desire so deeply to have someone to enjoy it with.
Yeah.
And I
think, and I hope for you, honestly, I hope for the both of us,
that
we can find that. But, you know, I think at this moment, like I was saying, it's like, you just have to put that love into other things. You put it into yourself, you put it into your business, put it into animals. Like, you know, we go through different phases in life. Like, not every phase, it's not all supposed to be just one big phase of the same thing. You know, like, you have this phase of where you were married and you got that experience, and, you know, hopefully one day you get that again. You know what I mean? And there's people that go through a million marriages looking for that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you never know what life has in store for you. Yeah. But it's almost like we have to learn to adapt to each phase. And we can love and still display it, but we kind of shift where into what we're displaying it to. Yeah. And it's like, right now in this phase of your life, on yourself. Yeah. Well, you did amazing. Seriously. Thank you so much for wanting to come on. Yeah. And sharing and being so vulnerable, because so many people will relate and understand.
But something like this.
It's so common. Yeah. And it sucks, but it is. But you did amazing. So thank you.